For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
As we enter the penultimate round of the season, we have a new leader at the front of the Premier Division standings as the GPX SimSports Vertex McLaren of Scott Kostrick leads season favourite Toby Hardiak in his new choice BMW by only 4 points, with 200 left up for grabs. So the Elite Championship also reduced to its closest margin in quite some time after SimCoach driver Andrew Dawson ended Sam Darbish's 4-week winning run following a brilliant win, converting from pole last time out around Sebring. That margin reduced to only 34 points as we arrive here at Road America for the 14 corners of this 6.5 kilometre circuit. A slightly more straightforward circuit for these drivers to tackle tonight, but it isn't without a handful of challenging corners. Look out for the high-speed turn 11 down at the bend, following on from that long sweeping carousel of turn 9 and turn 10. A common place to find drivers exploring the grass or finding a barrier. Leading you through all of tonight's action, as always, you're joined by myself, Joseph Glass, and my commentary partner, Mr. Dara Thacker. As the pressure mounts for all of our drivers, particular focus shifts to those challenging for the drivers and the teams' championships, which are slowly coming to their conclusion. And with that, Dara, an opportunity for some of them to convert one final strong result before that all-important season finale this time next week around Suzuka.
Yeah, and some home comforts here at this circuit, one that drivers will know well. We've been here a fair few times in whether it be SRI or in previous seasons of this event. You know, there are lots of drivers who will be able to memorise this circuit very well indeed. And so I'm looking forward to seeing which drivers are able to use that muscle memory the best, because in these kinds of conditions in the championship, you cannot afford to slip up now, and you really have to depend on that muscle memory to get you another good result, as you mentioned.
Absolutely then. So a bit of a quiet circuit again, as normal with the closing stages of a championship. So a bit more opportunity for some new drivers to score some points. Everybody out there, bar one, lapping in this qualifying session, which still has quite a bit of time remaining. So let's go over the formalities as always, and then we'll come back to join them in the final part of qualifying then. So let's start as always with the championship sponsors. Of course, we have the Cameo team providing all the trophies for this season. We have SimCoach and Trophy AI, our two choices for improving your sim racing performance, and of course Garage Wraps, the new sponsor for this championship season. Looking ahead to the calendar, we're nearly there. It's flown by absolutely. I remember a couple of months ago talking about how we had 10 weeks ahead of us. Most of them are gone now. We've got 2 weeks remaining. Tonight around Road America, 1 hour, and then next week around Suzuka for the season finale. Absolutely looking forward to that one. I think, from what I understand, a little bit more than the majority of the drivers. Suzuka are a personal favourite of mine, but it seems like for a few of those guys who are quite active in the server, not the same can't be said for many of them. So let's see how things go tonight, and they can dust themselves down and get ready for that one this time next week then. So the standings then, we come into tonight's race, of course, round 9, and as we said just a moment ago, the tightest margin that we've had in the elite standings for quite some time. Off the back of a SimCoach victory for the first time since the 3rd round, Andrew Dawson took his Mercedes from pole position right to the top step of the podium, ending that streak by Sam Derbyshire. Still leads the way, does the Corvette, on 656 points, but breathing right down his neck is that Mercedes. Tjek Plug stays inside the top 3. He's nearly 100 points shy of Andrew Dawson, so a lot of work for him if he wants to improve his position. He'll probably be looking over his shoulder at that sister team driver in the Corvette, Hayden Phoenix Miller, on 484 points, just 40 ahead of Luke van Goortel. He's gone about his business quietly, has the Dutchman, so far this season, but that string of consistent results right the way from the 3rd round of the season has seen him do very well in gaining places in the overall standings. Ignas Vinchezewski started the season strong. Sadly for him, he's slowly fallen a little way down the order. A P4 last time out after missing the race before. That gets him back into some shape, and he's with us tonight, doing well for him so far in qualifying. Let's see what the Lithuanian driver can do to try and bring back some of those points. He's 52 behind the top 5. Lewis Kenyon has been in that P7 for quite some time. A mixed bag of results for him throughout the course of the season. A season's best 2 weeks ago in the 7th round, but then he wasn't able to follow that up after an issue this time last week around Sebring, saw him finishing in 15th. He, however, is only 4 points behind Vinchezewski, so he can get himself into the top 6 with a decent result tonight. Of course, 2 more of our Vulcan drivers. Pedro Luis da Silva finishing in his favoured 9th position this time last week. The GPX Sim Sports McLaren has also stayed pretty similar over the last couple of weeks. He's yet to get himself inside the top 6 in the order. Let's see if that can be if it can be his night for that tonight then. After his joint best result of the season, Matt Hoyland in his new look Mustang gets himself into the top 9 for the first time this season, slowly creeping up on the back of the top 8. Matt will have his eyes focused on Pedro Luis da Silva and Lewis Kenyon in what we said is a smaller field tonight, which opens the door for some decent scoring points. The same can be said from last week, actually. That is almost how Hoyland got that result. He'll be hoping to replicate that one tonight. Josh Benson getting himself on the podium, first time inside the top 6, and he made it onto the podium in his SimCoach Mercedes, bunts himself right up into the top 10 straight with his hands on the trophy. He hasn't been with us on this graphic all season long, and then there he is, one good result alongside his teammate, of course. Andrew Dawson gets himself into the top 10 on 232 points. 8 points trailing him is Thomas Pugh. Again, hasn't been the best couple of weeks for him, but he's always been there. Only 8 points shy of a trophy. That will be Pugh's target for the remainder of this season. No doubt about that. Andrew Fairley had a good result a fortnight ago. Wasn't with us this time last week, and I'm not sure if he's with us again tonight. Doesn't look like he is, so we may see a new name taking the place of that Mustang when we enter the final round of the season next week. But for the time being, the top 12 it is for the Dark Wing Racing Mustang driver.
And then over in our GT3 Premier standings, it's Scott Kostrick who now has the lead in the championship on 508 points going into the final 2 rounds of the season. Toby Hardiak has been up there for so long, but a couple of really poor results in the last 2 weeks has meant that he has dropped into 2nd place, and we're still unsure as to whether he will still join us tonight. So there could be a chance, if Scott Kostrick wins tonight, to maybe wrap up the championship. He'd also have to outscore Grant Miller as well, though. He's on 438 points, consistently getting through some points and very happily inside the top 5, looking to consolidate this tonight and push himself away from the chasing pack, which includes Graham Favors, who won in round number 7, and they didn't appear last week, so it wasn't able to defend that race win. We will have to see if he's back and able to try and compete again, but he is a potent force for Phoenix Racing Blue in that BMW. Lewis Hammond's been consistent all season long, but had his best result of the season back at Sebring 7 days ago. He is in a bit of a hunt for at least P4 in the championship. It's so congested down here. Below Grant Miller, Favors 380, Hammond 376, Luke Bailey after a DNF last week is still on 370, so only 10 points back from 4th, as he sits in 6th with his 2 wins and 2 other podiums, along with 3 DNFs this season. If he's finished at all, he's finished on the podium. Will that continue tonight? Samuel Clark, podium a couple of weeks ago, DNF last week, again holding him back a little bit in 7th in the championship for the DXC Motorsports Kmart team. Again, 12 points behind Graham Favors. 4 drivers, all in a bit of a melee at the top end of this championship standings. Wesley Van Ren, he's been very inconsistent, but when he's been good, he's been right on it. And the P2 last week has put him into the top 8 and has enabled him to maybe push on towards the top 5 and away from, those guys outside of the top 10 who will be chasing after his trophy. Barry Wenman hasn't had anything better than a P5 so far this season, but he's still in 9th in the championship. Those consistent results, nothing worse, well, with the exception of 1, nothing worse than a 12th so far this season, means that he is 9th in the championship, over 300 points, and looking to maybe try and chase down a couple of those drivers tonight. At least, though, keep an eye on the likes of John Ludbrook, who, again, another driver. When he's been good, he's been right on it. 2 podiums and a 4th place this season, along with a few DNFs, has him on 306 points, but if he's going to score, it's likely to be high. Outside the top 10 looking in at the moment is last week's race winner, Ryan Abbots, who was such a cool performer in that Aston Martin. Can he replicate that tonight? If he does, he will put himself into top 10 position with 1 round to go. And Michael Rhodes, he's had 1 finish inside the top 8 this season, but it's good enough to get him 12th in the championship and well within range of a trophy by the end of the season.
Yeah, what is a shame, of course, as you said, Dara. Graham Favors won that race and then he didn't turn up. Ryan Abbots won the race last week and he is away this week as well. So our 2 race winners missing the following week, not able to try and make it back-to-back wins from either of those guys. But Graham is back with us, so maybe he can convert. Let's see what happens in that one then. So the team's championship order, it's looking pretty good at the moment for Vulcan Motorsports Gold. They've been sitting pretty at the top and the gap continues to open up. It's the best part of 200 points between the 2 teams at the front. Vulcan leading the Axis SimSports Blue team of Codman, Hutchinson, Johnson and Andrew Larkman. I believe Andrew Larkman is in the session with us tonight, a name that we haven't seen all that much so far this season. In fact, that can't be right because it says that he's Axis SimSports Red. So maybe there's something that's been changed there, but we'll not dwell on that for too long. Phoenix Racing Red next up inside the top 3. They'll definitely have their eyes on a P2 finish. They're well within their rights to be up there, and Grant Miller will be hoping that he can be the one to convert the biggest points out of his team and try and climb up the order in the last couple of races. Then the Vulcan Fasteners by Glasstech Racing of Hoyland, Stubb, Bailey and Seward have slowly made their way up the table. 5th last week, up into 4th. Those guys definitely progressing nicely, and again, well within their rights to be challenging for a spot inside the top 2 come the season's conclusion in about a week's time then. Bringing up there, right up behind them is the SimCoach drivers. They've been knocking on the door for quite some time as well. It's been an up and down season for those guys as Dawson has continued to score consistent points inside the top 4. The same couldn't have been said for the rest of his teammates, but with that result from Benson last week, that hoists them right back up into the top 5. The MJK sim racing team of Luke Van Gotel, Victor Van Zijs and Denny Plurgel want to get themselves into the 1,000 point mark tonight. Another strong and consistent result from Van Gotel may see that one come to fruition. Phoenix Racing Blue of Graham Vivers, Toby Hardiak and Shane Cotton. The points now fall on Vivers because I don't think Cotton or Hardiak are with us tonight. So let's see what that BMW driver is capable of. They're just 10 points away from the top 6. DC Motorsports coming up next, 8 points off the top 7 of Duke, Love, Douglas and Collier. Ahead of them, it's the Vulcan Motorsports Red drivers of Vinchesevsky's Czech Plug and Justin Eloff. We haven't seen Eloff competing in a number of weeks, however we do have the Lithuanian driver and the Dutchman of Vinchezevskis and Plurg with us this evening. They'll be hoping to get back on the horse and score some strong points in this one. The Moonshiners Racing Club of Liam Fraser, James Fraser, Dean Sheesby and Rob Gregg sit just inside the top 10, 20 points ahead of the GPX SimSports Vertex team, of course, with championship challenger Scott Kostrick driving alongside Paul Cowlishaw and Gareth Newton. For the first time in quite a few weeks, we aren't followed up with the second of the GPX SimSports teams. This time it's DXT KMR of Phillips, Clark, Wenman and McNaughton, of course. Clark and Wenman here with us in A-Split, and Danny Phillips in the elite class. He struggled to score points in that division so far this season. The points have been hauled mostly by Clark and Wenman, and it's looking good so far in qualifying for Samuel Clark. Let's see if he can hold on to the position that he has at the moment over the next 15 minutes then. Ellis Racing next, ahead of the Darkwing Racing red team of Critchell, Rhodes and Hammond with us in Split A. And then it's the second of our GPX SimSports teams of Robin Noel Brown, John Nudbrook and Hussein Sarakadesla in his Mustang. It's the Irish Racing pair of Jan Osberg and Jan Nash chasing after a finish inside the top 15 ahead of Phoenix Racing Green, STL, 9 Pegasus Panthera and the Simcast Racing team rounding out the top 20, Starsmore, Maymar Pilcher and Matthew Hunter. So let's see what is happening trackside here at Road America. Of course, a slightly quieter track, as we said. Just 32 of the 60 drivers with us tonight, so just over half a grid are racing in this one. And let's catch a driver as he crosses over the line. Who is that going to be? The best bet will probably be Andrew Larkman, I think it will be, Dara, down there in the Premier class. So let's see what this man... Oh, never mind. That's absolutely not what you want to see. He's come out the final corner right on time, and sadly for him, he finds himself in the barrier. But let's not doubt on that one, because here comes Sam Derbyshire, Elite Championship leader, coming around the final corner, trailed by 2 of his sister teams, or maybe even 2 of his teammates, as he crosses the line for a lap here at Road America.
That's what we plan that, isn't it? With Sam Derbyshire, the leader in the championship, at the front of our order. Let's see then, as he runs in towards turn number 1. Long straight, of course, down in towards this opening corner, but it is relatively high speed. You have to be bold and really committed to make a move through there. Little kink at 2 doesn't really exist. And then turn number 3 is this tightening right-hander, which can be tricky on lap 1, particularly if cars are jostling for position 2-3 wide, because where's the curb? It goes immediately, and you can find yourself eating some grass very quickly indeed. He's searching for some slipstream as he makes his way down towards the Moraine sweep and in towards turn 5, arguably the best overtaking spot on the racetrack. Heaviest braking zone at the end of a straight for sure, and we see a lot of drivers go to the inside here, but again, tightens up on the exit, careful not to go too far wide to find the gravel, as the guy in front has managed to do. Up the hill in towards turn 6, bit of a blind apex, got to be careful to hit that one perfectly, and then you're running down the hill again through 7 and then in towards 8, which is a really important braking zone, I think. People underrate it because you're going downhill, a little bit of load is off of those tyres, can be difficult to get the car stopped. Once you get out of this corner, run it back to the left-hand side so you can open up the carousel. This double apex right-hander going all the way through, more than 180 degrees of rotation. Keep it going if you're Sam Derbyshire all the way through, before you then have to start thinking about the kink. Really quite a scary corner, particularly if you're running very close to cars around you. So fast, and if it goes wrong, it's going to go very wrong indeed. There's a concrete wall on the outside for a very good reason. We might see a couple of cars in that tonight. Through Kettle Bottoms then, a couple of little kinks that somehow don't count as corners if turn 2 does. We make your end towards Canada corner. Turn number 12, another good overtaking spot, particularly late on in the race. Again, don't go too far wide. Gravel will bite you there and will really hurt you up through Thunder Valley. You've got Bill Mitchell bend at turn 13, and then all you've got to worry about is the final turn at turn number 14. Get on the power as early as you possibly can through here. Don't allow the car to walk you out wide, and make sure to get the slipstream off the car in front if you're in that battle. Rides up the hill, really steep run towards turn number 1, and a long run as well. Where's the line? You're going to find it in just a minute, and that's on up with Sam Derbyshire. Already fastest. Does that go faster? It's a couple of seconds off, nowhere near.
Yeah, 32 1,000ths of a second separating him and his championship rival Andrew Dawson. Joined late into the session, has done about half the laps that Derbyshire has, and yet he's got him just within half a tenth of a second. Sorry, not half a tenth. Yes, half a tenth of a second, just shy. And as another car heads its way off the track onto the right-hand side, Sam Derbyshire continues round with a little train in behind him then. Let's see what action we have as we cross the line It's yellow sectors for Andrew Dawson. It looks like he's been on a bit of an excursion lap. Jamie Foster not doing so bad in the opening section of that lap. And here's Grant Miller making his way around the final corner now. He's a tenth and a half clear of Samuel Clark in what is a lead 6 of McLaren's in that Premier class. That's not biased at all. It seems like it's been a theme of the Premier class so far this season, Dara, but I don't think we've seen 6 of them starting in a row at the front of the class all season long.
I don't think we have either. So that's something that we're going to have to see if that can be maintained. Maybe Andrew Larkin can make it 7. Who knows? Maybe Shane Cotton. Maybe asking a bit much. I mean, Andre Muntian was up there last week, wasn't he? Didn't rule him out to get a quick lap time in towards the end of the session. Scott Kostrick, championship leader, coming out of the pit lane as he looks to maybe wrap up the championship tonight. That feels like a very long way off, but it is doable. If he manages to do so, he'd have to win and hope other results go his way. But stranger things have happened elsewhere, right, Joe? So something we're going to have to keep in the back of our minds. For the elite class, I think because we've got so comparatively few drivers there, points are going to be huge for any position that you finish in. So I think all of those guys are going to be really focused on finishing the race and making sure they don't make mistakes, because this is a great chance.
No, it absolutely is, and that was the point that we made. When you get to this point in the season, that does tend to happen as the drivers who aren't too invested in the championship begin to sort of fizzle out, and those who are fighting for something tend to stay around. So, yes, exactly, Dara, as you say, as you cross the line, it's actually 13 in the elite class. Thomas Critchell yet to set a lap time. He is out there on the circuit at the moment, though, so we might see a lap getting posted from him in not too long, as Scott Kostrick pushes it a little bit too much on those cold tyres of his McLaren, brings gravel right across the path of Graham Beavers, who won't be best pleased about that one, as he's got to get it off his tyres before he heads around through the carousel. Lewis Hammond taking a little bit of a trip on the left-hand side, it seems, as he exited out of the final corner. Andrew Dawson seems to be improving as well, running a little bit wide. Is he going to be able to improve in the final sector? We'll have to wait and see. Jamie Foster again, he improved in the first 2 sectors on his laps lap, and now it's the 3rd sector on this next lap. As Dawson crosses the line, it doesn't look like it's going to be an improved time for him. It's not. Its best part of half a second away from pole, best part of half a second away from his best time. The Mercedes will go again, of course. Still 8 minutes left in this session. We've seen things change, not an awful lot, but we have seen things change toward the end of the session, so we can't count anybody out then. Luke Bailey in his Mercedes crossing the line and going on yet another lap. We saw him just making his way out of the pit lane a little bit earlier on. He now makes his way through the second corner. Let's ride on board with Luke, see how he gets on in his Mercedes, of course. A pretty front heavy car, as we imagine, with that front engine in the Mercedes, and it's served him well, as we said so far, Dara. When he finishes, he tends to finish in a very strong position, but that's been a bit of an issue for him so far this season. 3 DNFs, 1 round missed, and 4 podiums. About as bipolar of a season that you would ever ask for, really.
Yeah, and somehow he's still kind of in that conversation towards the top end of the championship, isn't he? I guess those podiums really carrying him through, but it just shows that consistency at the top is going to get you a long way. If inconsistency towards the top gets you to that top 10 in the championship. So, yeah, definitely something to keep an eye out for tonight. And if he can get another couple of spots in the order, I think he's going to be feeling a little bit safer about his position. But it is very tight up there, isn't it? Less than half a second between the top 7 on a track that is more than 2 minutes long. But this is one of those tracks, Joe and I talk about it every now and again, week by week, that has a lot of dead time to it. You know, the hour will go past pretty quickly. Long run to turn 1, long run to turn 5, relatively long run, really, out of the carousel and to Canada corner, where you can't do too much. You can make the move at the end of the straight, but overtaking opportunities are reduced around here, so that hour is going to feel like it goes through a lot faster because we're spending so much of that hour running at full throttle just behind or just ahead of the cars around you. So qualifying position at this kind of track really is important, because yes, it's, you know, overtaking is possible, but those opportunities are fewer and further between, you know, per minute than it would be at, say, the Red Bull Ring. Even though that's a bit of dead time, you get to those braking zones pretty quickly every single lap. So yeah, interesting to see how this qualifying section is going to impact it, but I'd say it's pretty important.
Andrew Dawson crossed the line there, was nearly catching up with his best time. He was about 2 tenths away from that pole position time on that last attempt, so he's still pushing, still trying, and he will have another couple of attempts before the session comes to a close. Track still very busy out there. Let's have a look at the map. It's, well, got a lot of action all around the circuit. A big cluster of cars heading their way down through the bend, down toward Canada Corner. Quite quiet on the pit straight as those 3 or 4 make their way around the final corner. Only a handful of them in the pit lane at the moment. 6 out of our 32 drivers in the pit lane, which shows how much these guys are pushing to try and improve their lap times so late on in the session. A theme, of course, of this season is that the track tends to evolve nicely up until the halfway point, then it begins to fall off a little bit, making it even harder for guys to set improved lap times. So anybody that does really has pulled it out the bag toward the latter stages of this session. And Samuel Clark looks like he is on a decent lap at the moment, and it's a time that goes 2/10 quicker than his previous and 1/10 quicker than Grant Miller. Samuel Clark keeps the McLaren record up, 2:02.765 for the DXT driver, who pulls off the road nicely. He will probably be satisfied for that. Maybe, Dara, he won't go again, because I'm not sure even he will think that he can improve on that one.
Yeah, well, he's not got too long to do so. You've only got a couple more tools of the circuit, really, before he's not going to be able to have another chance. Andrew Dawson think this is going to be a... No, it's not a prep lap. That's just a misleading timing glitch. Let's see. Does he improve at all? He does improve. Goes fastest. Only 2 more laps that he can really set, but he's put a 1/10 of a second between himself and Sam Derbyshire. And exactly when it matters and exactly when he needs to do so, he's put himself onto provisional pole. Sam Derbyshire has to reply now.
Yeah, he's been waiting for that one. I think Andrew's been improving lap after lap. He was 5/10, then he was 2/10, and then on that lap he improved by a 1/10 of a second. That's quite funny, isn't it? As the 2 championship class pole position drivers switch, both of them overdoing their fellow driver by a 1/10 of a second. Dawson to Derbyshire and Clark down to Miller. An answer still needed by Scott Kostrick. Actually, at the moment, if we have a look at the overall standings, he has the driver of Jamie Foster, the elite driver, in P12, in between him and Grant Miller. So Kostrick will want to close that gap to try and start the race right with those guys, not having to worry about any other elite drivers getting in his way from the start. Aside from Jamie Foster, there's only 3 more elite drivers sort of thrown in the mix after P4, after P5 and after P6 in the Premier class. We find one of our elite drivers. Someone has just gone up the order there, Dara. It was Thomas Pugh in his Axis Mercedes.
The Mercs going well at the moment, aren't they? In that, well, overall, really, I mean, yes, Luke Bailey and Rumbakaya not in the top 5, but they're still running nicely in 7th and 8th. And obviously with Andrew Dawson going fastest. Derbyshire wasn't able to set a fast lap time there. That lap time only really would have been good enough for what? That's 7th place there, so not a great lap time. Ignaz Vinciszewski's gone a little bit quicker, but stays in P6. We're getting to the stage now where drivers in less than a minute are going to be starting their final laps in this qualifying section. Of course, when the timer hits 0, you can finish the lap time that you're on, but this lap is so long that you have to have started the lap in the next 30 seconds if you want to get 2 more bites at it. Danny Weir, Barry Wenman, Andrew Dawson will all get a second bite at the cherry, and they'll want to, because Danny Weir, slowest of them all, and well, that was 11 seconds slower than the fastest time in the class. He could definitely go faster than that. They're all prepping for their final runs, and there is a lot of cars on the circuit for a final run in an hour-long session from what we've seen so far this season.
So Grant Miller only improving in the 4th of 6 sectors here as he gets the power down in his McLaren coming out the final corner. Is there going to be an immediate response to Samuel Clark, who was just getting out the way of Grant as he headed through the penultimate set of corners as he crosses the line under the flag, under the marshal? Let's see, is it an improved time for Mr. Miller? No, it is not. He remains where he is, and he will go again in that McLaren, in that Phoenix Racing McLaren. I was going to make a point there, Dara, about what was it going to be? Unknown, actually. We'll come back to that one. What is interesting, however, is that sim coach Andrew Dawson has 5 Vulcan drivers in behind him, from Derbyshire down to Vinciszewski's. And again, we've got that McLaren cluster in the Premier class, and we've seen it a few times before, but maybe not as aggressive as we're seeing it this week. Derbyshire down to Vinciszewski's, all chasing after that poor sim coach Mercedes at the front.
Yep, and we'll have to see if that's going to be the case. Well, how long that'll be the case during the race, that'll be an interesting theme to watch, I think, as we run our way through. Derbyshire, he's coming to the line. Is it it's a fastest final sector? Is that going to be enough to offset Andrew Dawson? No, it's not. It would be a lap time good enough for P2 in itself, but that's all that he can do. Unless he goes one more time, we'll have to see if he can, but that could be the end of the runs for Sam Derbyshire.
Danny Phillips with a mixed bag of sectors in that lap. Doesn't improve his time either, and that will be him done as he pulls off to one side of the road. Barry Wendman in another McLaren making his way around the corner. Needs best part of 0.4 of a second if he wants to get himself on the front row in his class, but less than 1/10 of a second will do it to get himself onto row 2. Let's see. It's not looking good in the sector times as Wendman crosses the line. I don't think that will be an improvement for him by any stretch of the imagination. Andrew Dawson was going faster there, but I think he's made a mistake and he's pulled straight. Yes, he has. He's pulled straight into the pit lane. No improvements for the SimCoach driver outside of the opening sector. Grant Miller coming around the final corner, fighting that McLaren on the exit. Oh, and he backs out with only 4 seconds left to go. I think he realised there that he wasn't going to make the timing line, and he wasn't setting an improved lap time. He comes in at the pit lane. It's looking good for Samuel Clark at the moment, unless championship leader Kostrick has anything to say about it. But with 5 yellow sectors, it doesn't look like it's going to be his day.
No, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Crosses the line, we'll get the confirmation officially from the timing. What does it say? It's going to be... Well, it looks like he invalidated the lap time because there is no time coming up at all for him. He will stay P3 for now. Wesley Van Ren up next in that number 99. Is there any improvement for the Dutchman? Couple of improved sectors, and he does improve the time, but he stays down in P16. Josh Taylor, P11 in the elite class, over a second off. If he gains a 10th or so, he can get past Jamie Foster, but he can't quite find the time. Will stay in 11th. Sam Derbyshire comes around the final corner. Doesn't look like he's going to be improving at all, but he's going to run to the line. We'll see if he can do it. Needs a 10th.
Let's see then. It's not going to... Well, yeah, as you said, Dara, the sector times not looking the best. Oh, and that's a massive issue there. Technically, it seems, by Mr. Derbyshire. I don't think human hands are capable of moving a steering wheel in the way that it looked there on screen. So let's hope that Derbyshire doesn't have technical difficulties there right before the start of the session, because that is not what you want when you're chasing a championship. So fingers crossed for him. He's got about 6 or 7 minutes before we roll for the formation lap to get himself sorted. It might require a quick reboot, get himself back in the sim before the time runs out. Then Scott Kostrick did he get himself on another lap here, Dara? I think he might have done. The session continues. It's only him, Wendman, Larkman and Van Ren on the lap time as Wendman enters the pit lane. It's now or never for Kostrick. In the first half of the lap, no improvements.
Yep, and will almost certainly stay in third by the end of this session. Very few drivers, in fact, just really him left to go. Wesley Van Ren crossed the line, so I don't quite know how he'd be able to set another lap time. But that does feel like it's session over, really. Samuel Clark on pole for that Premier class. And for him, at the back of that group of cars fighting for fourth in the championship, excuse me, that's going to be a really important step, I think, because he's in a great spot to push on in this race and consolidate early on.
Yeah, there's been a comment left in the chat to say that Derbyshire was 2 tenths up, but he ran out of fuel. Still looked a little bit awkward with the onboard there as to what happened when he hit the wall. But if he did run out of fuel, then that would be a big, big shame for him if he had the time under his belt. It won't matter too much if he can be confident that he will go toe-to-toe in terms of lap time with the SimCoach Mercedes. Then maybe he won't mind starting just next to him on the front row of the grid. But of course, the stats do count, and he will have wanted that pole position, no doubt about it. But there's still an hour of racing left for these drivers to sort of get themselves sorted in an order. Larkman is glitching around, so to be honest, I don't really want to put us through any of that. So let's have a look and just jump to a scenic cam. We'll sit here and wait for him to cross the line.
When he does, we can get into the results and then in towards the race session. Where is he? Nobody knows.
Oh,
he could be anywhere. There we go.
He's pulled off.
There we go. Yeah. Finally. People were shouting at him in the chat, and he realised, oh, maybe I should get out of the car.
Absolutely, then. So, looked like a pretty competitive session. Not too many gaps between the front runners in each of those classes, and it looks like we've been set up nicely for a good fight between Clark, Miller, and Kostrick in the Premier class, and of course, the two at the front of the elite class, Dawson and Derbyshire, within 1/10 of a second of one another. That should set us up nicely then. Of course, as we said at the start, Dara, these drivers know that they're running out of opportunities, and they'll know that they've got to score points tonight. Will they be overly eager to make that happen? Could that come back to bite them? Of course, time will soon tell. It's going to be a bit of a fine balance between pushing and between holding what you've got, not to risk too much in the early stages here.
Yep, you want to make sure that you are competitive right at the start of the session. Don't want to be giving too much away. but it's tricky. This circuit, because drivers will know it so well, you almost overthink certain elements to this. And so I think you've got to be very much wary of what could happen in the early stages of this race, particularly the front of the field. We've seen time and time again this season teammates tripping over each other a little bit. Could we see that again? Of course, they'll hope to avoid that, but it's never easy, is it? Particularly when we get towards this stage of the championship. This and next round to go to wrap up the championship. But oh, hello, and that for Ignace is not the right line.
No, it's absolutely not. And I was thinking there, as you were talking about not giving too much away, on this track we have one of those corners where someone else's mistake can be incredibly costly for the entire field, of course. Heading through this corner now, through the bend, through the kink, we've seen in seasons gone by cars going maybe side by side or someone oversteering through that corner, getting sent off to the right-hand side, coming back across the circuit, scooping someone up, and before you know it, it can become a little bit of a traffic jam through that sector, of course. There's a few other corners around that on various calendars where it can really become a bit of a roadblock quite quickly. We have seen it before, fingers crossed that we don't see it again tonight. And that, first of all, a benefit for a smaller grid with only 30 cars. That does mitigate the risk a little bit, and of course it pays dividends if you're at the front of the order. Much less risk that you're going to get caught up by that kind of incident. But if you're toward the back of the field, then you're at the mercy of the other drivers, it seems.
Yeah, you are, and even though there's not that many cars on the circuit, the nature of the track, particularly through the opening sector, with it being so narrow, in terms of if you're off the track, you're realistically gone from the racing circuit completely. It means that even if you're 2, maybe 3 wide, but just even 2 wide, you can be in a bit of a risky situation right from the word go, that you obviously will be trying to avoid, but it's almost impossible to do so here, because backing out will almost certainly put you into a bad spot as well. So yeah, tricky to really judge, and this warm-up session will kind of allow them time to get into that mode of thinking, but really allow them to get that kind of experience.
Some good battling here, testing the limits as Wenman gets a massive run on Luke Bailey. A good opportunity for some guys to just test out how these cars feel in the dirty air, of course, of the car in front. Won't be too bad around here, of course, with lots of straights. But yeah, good opportunity to do some racing before we get started. Then track temperatures 22 degrees, pretty optimal, I would say. Not too cool and definitely not too warm at all, so I'm sure there'll be quite a lot of grip out there for these drivers. When we're getting awfully close to the back of that Mercedes, may have even made contact there. He's got a bit of grass and a bit of damage on his front bumper. There's the 56, I think that is, in that McLaren. But yeah, track temp's looking good. I think that'll give the drivers a lot of confidence that they can push the limits here. Hopefully it doesn't take too long to get those tyres warmed up.
Hopefully so. They'll be learning how easy it is now. I don't think this will be a track where drivers will take tyres at the pit stop. It's not particularly demanding on the tyres at all, so I can't really see a reason for them to do so. It's just that re-warming, isn't it, when they come out of the pit lane, that they'll have to try and work out. Difficult to do in a warm-up session, but all the same, they will have a go. I always love which drivers come out in a warm-up session, who just goes to get a snack, who goes to get a drink, and then who spends their 5 minutes practicing as well as they can. The divide is always really interesting to me.
It is. I think we've seen a lot more of that since the patch a few months ago, and then maybe since the 1 hour race, some guys feel like there's maybe more opportunity to get used to how the car's going to feel. Obviously higher fuel, as we keep saying every week, does make these cars feel a little bit different to how they might be set up in that sprint session. Here's Jan Osberg making his way around the track in that massive Mustang, a new car for him. He's actually racing with us in the Brit Car 24 around Silverstone at the start of December in the Mustang, so it's good for him to get a handling over that car. I've not even bought it yet, so I need to get my practice in, but that brings us to the end of the warm-up session. Jan will soon disappear off screen and we'll be underway for the start of the 9th round of the championship. All eyes on the 2 at the front of the elite class.
Yeah, and lots of, I think, hope at the front of the class as well. Lots of drivers that are going to be looking for a good start, a fast start, and to maybe gain a position or two, unless you're traditional Samuel Clark. Just keeping their noses out in front will be their aim, but it's going to be busy at turn 2 and turn 3, and it's almost impossible to say that no one's going to be off the road through there.
Absolutely then. So let's take a look at how the grid forms up. I've just glanced out my bedroom window and snow is falling in the northeast, which is a great sight for me. Love a bit of that. Anyway, back to the racing. Andrew Dawson takes his second pole position in a row and his third pole position of the season. He's really starting to make a habit of that toward the front of the order. The 194 sets a time of a 2:01.782, exactly 1/10 of a second quicker than championship leader Sam Derbyshire for Vulcan Motorsports Gold. He will share the front row of the grid. Behind them is Hayden Miller. He's going to help, I'm sure, at the front to put a bit of a challenge on. We've seen those two working well together around Canada and other circuits alike over the last few weeks. So Mr. Derbyshire will be pleased to have reinforcements in behind. It's Vulcan Motorsports Gold, Gold, Red and Red through Miller, Kenyon, Plurg and Vinciszewski's the top 6 ahead of Pedro Louis da Silva and Thomas Pugh inside the top 8. Luc van Gortel will start on row 5 ahead of the Premier Class poleman of Samuel Clark for DXT Motorsports KMAR. Grant Miller will start ahead of Jamie Foster and then Scott Kostrick, those two with an elite driver in between them, which is what we saw at the front of the order. And I'm not sure if something's gone wrong here, Dara. I'm seeing an awful lot of crash symbols. Everybody seems to be crashing. Maybe that's just a little bug as the drivers get underway. It looks like people are okay. So Jamie Foster starts ahead of Scott Kostrick and Lewis Hammond. It will be Josh Taylor in P15 ahead of Barry Wenman, who rounds out row 8. Danny Phillips and Michael Rhodes will start ahead of Thomas Critchell, and Luke Bailey will be inside the top 20 for the Vulcan Fasteners. He'll start ahead of Rob Mackay and Andrew Larkman on row 11. Andrew Fellows and John Ludbrook will share row 12 ahead of Hussein Sarek Adesla and Graham Beavers for Phoenix Racing Blue in that BMW. He leads the Mustang of Jan Osberg and Shane Cotton starting in behind him. Wesley Van Ren and Danny Weir will start ahead of Pete Paeva and Andre Muntian, and then Matt Hoyland not setting a time for him. Work to be done to get himself past all the Premier drivers if Mr. Hoyland wants to keep up with that good scoring run for himself and the team. Let's keep our eyes on the 123 in the early stage of this one to see how fast he can get himself on the back of the elite class order.
It'll be interesting, I think, when we see that green flag fly in a couple of minutes' time when drivers make their way around to the start. Well, he's leaving a gap to the pace car as if it's a safety car start. I'm not too sure why, but anyway. It'll be interesting, I think, to see how those Vulcan cars get themselves through the opening turn. I mean, you can see them as a unit, can't you, behind? Not the easiest thing to be looking behind at. But at the same time, we've seen it this season so far that they've tried so hard to not trip over each other that it's almost caused a bit of a detrimental impact to themselves. So we'll have to see which Vulcan we see, because it could go either way, really. Andrew Dawson's going to be looking over his shoulder. I reckon he'll either be third or have a 3-second lead by the end of the opener.
It is, and of course we know the kind of driver that Dawson is. Very experienced, very composed, doesn't like to overthink too much. He'll be driving to see how it goes tonight. He won't have any expectation. He'll just be hoping for a good race with some guys that he knows very well. Of course, him and Sam working well together, both outside of SRI and inside of SRI, it seems, having good battles as well. But you know, we've got to build it up somehow. Of course, Sarah. Sam will definitely be relishing the opportunity to go at him, knowing that he doesn't have to look in his mirrors, because with having 4, even 5 of his teammates in behind him, 4 of his teammates in behind him, that creates some sort of psychological ease, doesn't it? I don't think we've seen anything like that in ESR or in SRI this entire time, and it's going to surely fall into the favour of Sam Derbyshire, at least in the opening stages.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, I think. Derbyshire is, well, ready and waiting, isn't he, really? He is lurking as he works his way through. There they are. Lost them for a minute, somewhere in the Wisconsin countryside, but they are most certainly there. Just a couple more corners to go. I think this is going to be a good chance for Dawson to get away. Has to make sure he nails this launch. Easier to do, I think, on that run up the hill, because you can catch the other drivers out.
He can then, so the Sim Coach 194 will lead the pack around the final corner. They'll all begin to butch up, and Sam Derbyshire on the right hand side of our screen will form up alongside that Mercedes before we get underway. It's Hayden Miller directly behind the Sim Coach Mercedes, championship leader on the right hand side of the picture. It's a little bit of a run down toward the line, but as soon as the green flag falls, it's over to Dawson to get some underway for round 9 of the season.
Here we go then. 60 minutes on the clock and the lights are on, which means we are going here. Good start from Andrew Dawson. Immediately we're seeing the Vulcan cars get into line. There is no real overlap as they run towards turn number 1 right at the front of the field. 2 by 2 by 2 further back though as they work their way down this very long opening straight. Is there an inside line behind? Yes, there is. 2 by 2 for 6th. Oh, and already a spin. Oh, I'm not too sure which Vulcan car that was, but it was one of them. Vintage is going around. That is sadly not the first time this season that he has popped himself around on the opening lap. That is a bit of a move from Pedro Luis Silva trying to find a way through. Can't quite get that one done behind. This is the big train of McLarens. You can put all of them. Clark still ahead of Hammond and Wembley. Got a bit of an advantage, a good advantage in the opening couple of corners. Jan Osberg behind is tracking it, but look how close they are.
Most of the class have made their way through nicely. All of the Premier drivers seem to have survived that opening exchange. It's disaster for Vinciszewski, as we said that before. Sadly for him, he was tagged and spun around on the entry into turn 1. There's been a little bit of mincing going around here. 3 wide, nearly ahead, with Luke Bailey of the Vulcan Fasteners stuck on the inside, but that Mustang of Hussein Sarakadesla gets himself ahead and out the way as the Mercedes cuts off the nose of Andrew Larkman as they head through turn 7, nearly flat out once the tyres are up to temperature, but for now it might require a little lift. Up the inside looks Wesley Van Ren on Matt Hoyland, who's made good ground, making up 9 places from the start in the opening 8 corners here. That's more than a place a corner for the British driver as things stand. Then back toward the front, Dawson still leading Derbyshire, who leads Hayden Miller. Czech Plug is up 1 place and Lewis Kenyon has swapped around with him. Luke Van Gotel has gained 2 places, and we've got Mincing going on here. 3 wide, Dara, down toward Canada corner.
Yeah, is there an inside? Well, any kind of line. Goodness me, that's Rob Mackay trying to work his way through, threading a needle and then sending. Oh no.
Oh, and then he stops.
Oh my. Oh goodness me, that was a little bit.
Yeah.
Rob Mackay, he went inside, he went outside, and then all of a sudden he was on the inside again. Went in far too hot, too much excitement in 20 seconds for Rob, and in the end he's hit the car in front. That is Grant Miller, who injured after that contact, and he's limping surely back to the pit lane. It's given a good start to Hussein Sarakadesla, who is up the order in 6th place. There you go, Rob Mackay. That car is very much worse wear after, well, he got rammed, didn't he, quite frankly?
He did. It's a very exciting pack here. Is who's that? John Ludbrook trying to get himself past Andrew Fellows. He's got the inside line, but damage on the front of that Porsche won't help him in a straight line. Hoyland now up 12 places. This is exactly the kind of start that he wants. He might be about to get 2 more here. He's alongside the Porsche. He's not going to be able to get it up the inside of the Mercedes. He thought about it for a split second there. He'll maybe try and get him on the run down in toward turn 5. Hoyland is already through the midfield of the Premier class, and he's only, once he gets past Fellows, he's going to have 4 more drivers to go before he gets himself into the top 10. Samuel Clark has got himself up past Jamie Foster, and Hoyland's made contact there, and he's slowed right down. I think he was just caught out under braking there. Perhaps he thought that Fellows was going to carry a little bit more speed than he did. That is not what you like to see, and Jan Osberg has put him round. Hoyland may well have to reset the pit lane. He's lost his rear wing.
Yeah, and again, like I said earlier on, it's almost impossible that we go an opening lap without incident of some kind. We've seen a fair bit, haven't we, in the opening 3 or 4 minutes of this race. Meanwhile, the drivers that have been able to keep out of it, Hammond, Rhodes and Kostrick, running nose to tail through the carousel. They're a bit of a ways behind Wembley and Clark, though, who are up the road, and a fantastic start for the 2 of them to be away from this group of cars and to be able to just have a little bit more breathing room at the moment. Rhodes can see Hammond in front of him, nowhere near close enough to make a move, but Scott Kostrick may be trying to make a move on him, not to the inside line. Thought we may see something. Oh goodness me, there's contact. Is there a car off? No, there wasn't. There is a car off.
Yeah,
that's Andrew Larkman off the road. There's so much going on at the moment in the opening laps.
Yeah, I saw a few changed positions down there. I figured it might have been around the kink, and there, lo and behold, yes it was, the McLaren facing the wrong way up the circuit. Thankfully he was cleared and everybody else managed to get around him from what we could see on our screens at least. Ludbrook has got a lot of company in behind him. He's got Shane Cotton, Jan Osberg, Graham Beavers. Who's that? Was that Pete Baeva? No, not sure who pulled off into the pit lane there. It might have been Andrew Larkman after getting his McLaren back in order. Wesley Van Ren looking up the inside of Andrew Fellows again, going down into turn 1. The rear end of that Mercedes looking okay after the contact from Hoyland this time last lap going into turn 5. That was really the chain reaction that set off things going from bad to worse for Hoyland. The slow exit out of turn 5 following the contact made more contact going into turn 6. Not his own fault, but he sort of invited the pack right onto his tail, and that is what sees Hoyland back inside the pit lane. And the closest 2 cars that we have on the track, as Van Ren looks to the inside yet again, this time gets his car alongside Fellows in the 44, fancies hanging it around the outside, touches the gravel. That should be job done for the 99, because the inside to the left-hander is his once again. That's Van Ren now up into the top 8.
Yeah, and he can now try and push on towards Luke Bailey. It's a huge gap to drive into, 5.5 seconds. Bigger between 7th and 8th than it is between 1st and 7th. So really, really big window to drive into. Cotton is away from this. It's Favors and Osberg who are fighting it out. Osberg in that Mustang, that orange Mustang, looking for a move, can't quite find it. They've got the Brazilian Pete Paeva right behind, but Graham Favors is through, and our race winner from 2 weeks ago is up into 12th. He's got a long way to go to try and replicate that win, though.
So here's our race leaders then. It's Dawson ahead of Derbyshire, ahead of Miller. The top 3 stay where they are. Plurg, of course, the beneficiary of Winchesewski's spinning round, and Lewis Kenyon has lost 1 place from the start as well, but still inside the top 5. Looking good for Pedro Louis da Silva, who's inside the top 6 as things stand, but he's got Luc van Gotel for company. 2 drivers who've been extremely consistent so far this season, and I would bet on them to keep it clean throughout this one. Both of them will know that tonight is the opportunity to score good points with quite a quiet field out there, and so I'm sure they won't want to get joined up with one another when they go side by side. We'll keep our eyes on that one. Should be some great battling between them, and they might be a little bit close as it stands. No, it's actually Pedro Louis da Silva all over the back of Lewis Kenyon, who might be under pressure as they head down toward turn 5.
Here we go then. Good overtaking opportunity down here if you can make it work. Pedro Luis da Silva though a little bit too far back. We're not going to see him make any moves this time by, you would expect. And yeah, we'll have to sit and wait using all of that track on the right hand side. But there is no move for him on Lewis Kenyon right now. Top 7, top 8 even, top 9 really tightly packed in the elite class for the time being, and it's good to see them running like this. But again, we see it every single week, Joe. They're already into that early holding pattern. They want to be able to make sure that they can save some fuel. This is a big fuel guzzler in terms of a circuit, so they want to make sure that they're saving some, and sitting in a train like this, even if it's just a couple of cars, can be quite beneficial. Van Ren wants to try and get through on Winchesewski's though, after Ignac's poor start.
Let me just say, Winchesewski's actually just got past Van Ren going into turn 5 and up under the bridge, so we'll see what the pace is like between the Porsche and that Lamborghini. I would guess that the Lamborghini would start riding off into the distance. Of course, he's got himself a nice gap to drive into over the next couple of laps before he gets himself on the back of Luke Bailey. It might help Van Ren and Fellows catch up with Bailey if Ignace makes it a little bit harder than it needs to be once he catches up with that Mercedes, but for the time being it's a slight gain for that Lamborghini after an issue going into the first corner. At least he's recovered nicely. Then the 2 dark wing racing Brits of Hammond and Rhodes doing battle at the moment. Rhodes trailing in behind, but both of them in a very, very favourable position at the start of this race. Surely this is Michael Rhodes' best sitted position. He finished 4th in round 3. He's 4th at the moment in round 9, and he'll be cautious not to do too much against Lewis Hammond, who's of course got himself on the podium for the first time last week. At the moment he's in position to do that again, but this train is pretty lengthy all the way down there to Luke Bailey and Sarika Desla and Kostrick in behind. Lewis Hammond will know that he's got some of the fastest drivers in the class not too far behind him.
Yep, and we'll know that he's got to be wary of those running directly on his tail. A little bit wide though from Michael Rhodes. He's going to give a bit of breathing room to the number 32 as they run their way out towards turn 5 once again here. But it's not going to be easy to defend if there's a good run from Michael Rhodes. He's getting closer, but it's just not going to be close enough to make a send into this tricky braking zone. Maybe in the background we're looking at a move from Andrew Fellows, but he's going to sit behind Wesley Van Ren for the time being as well. As that Mustang, sorry, that wasn't Andrew Fellows, it was Luke Bailey. Getting ahead of myself, looking at the wrong Mercedes there, but Luke Bailey looking for the move on the Sarika Desla. Not going to work out just yet. Very tight train of 5 here. Yeah,
looking good. You can tell that the sun is starting to set. We've got that orange tone over the camera and over the track, which will, I'm sure, look pretty good for our drivers out there tonight. 2 McLarens going so close to the sequence of corner. Well, 3 McLarens in fact, but 2 teammates. Looks awfully good in this settlement as they make their way around for what is the 5th time after 10 minutes have passed. So I want to go back and see what happened a little bit earlier on with that Rob Mackay incident, because it seemed awfully mundane for a moment and then it sprung to life as Rob jinked from left to right. So let's cut back and see what went on. Hopefully we don't miss the overtake there on that McLaren. So a bit of slow traffic ahead. That's why, Dara, because they were slow, which allowed Rob Mackay to slingshot himself through that gap. Does nicely, a little bit of contact, then comes over and then goes for another move. Oh, and then it's just difficult, and yeah, Rob comes to a stop. And when you come to a stop like that with so many cars following you through, it's it's bound to catch somebody out. And that's what it did, but his eyes must have lit up here, Dara, as he saw these cars going slowly, thinking this is my chance. Sadly for him, it was pretty short-lived.
Yeah, it was, and in the end, not really what he needed at all, and finding himself in a world of bother, especially with some of those cars coming through. It was just a big mess, wasn't it, really, down there? And then the cars coming through didn't really help either, because they didn't slow down, did they?
Yeah, I'm trying to find Grant Miller on our timing sheet just to see what his perspective is, but I can't. Yes, he is. There he is. I'm not going to be able to do it in time. Let's do that one more time and see what Grant saw, because it was pretty abrupt stop from him as he got damage, maybe off the initial contact. Maybe he was going to try and bring it back into the pit lane. Maybe he does that because he's awfully cautious, and then bang, there's a Mercedes right in front of him. Nothing that he can do about that one. And thankfully, Dara, we didn't miss anything because Michael Rhodes is still ahead of Scott Kostrick.
Still there, still in the same order that they were, so we've not missed too much from this race so far. Again, holding pattern is, I think, what we're seeing. Don't really want to have to make a move early on. Luke Van Gortel has got past Pedro Luis de Silva. I'd suggest that's a mistake from Pedro, because he was a long way ahead of Luke, but now Luke has jumped in front, so we'll maybe have to keep an eye on that, maybe try and work out what's happened there. But either way, in this battle, actually, let's look at it. Luke Van Gortel is now ahead of Pedro Luis de Silva. He lost about a second in that sector, did Pedro, which would notionally suggest that he did go off somewhere, but not entirely sure where, maybe into the carousel.
Let's have a look then as Luke Van Gortel got himself past Luis de Silva. Let's see, the McLaren blue ahead. Let's ride on board with him. Runs off wide onto the gravel, has a little snap, manages to catch it, and up the inside goes the Dutchman there, and then doesn't really have an opportunity to fight that one back, does the McLaren, although he gives it a good go actually. Let's ride on with this perspective as he heads through the kink. He's not giving anything, not leaving anything on the table as we head through the fast corner. He backs off a little bit, he was a little bit too close to the back end of that McLaren, of that Porsche, to get himself through the kink, and that was how it was done.
Yeah, easily done, and yeah, well, that explains it then, right? I guess, as they run their way in towards turn number 3. Van Gortel now ahead, but you can see Pedro Luis de Silva right on the tail, maybe going to go move towards turn number 5. We'll see if he gets enough of a slipstream down here. Doesn't look like he's close enough at the moment, but Van Gortel is a ways behind Lewis Kenyon, so it's going to be a very strong slipstream effect in favour of Pedro. Let's see, does he duck out at all? Does he stay in the slipstream? He's going to stay behind, and he's not going to force the overtake just yet. And again, early on in the race, you're not going to force anything too hard, because you just don't want to allow yourself to make mistakes and find yourself down the order and maybe a lap down in the same way that we see from the likes of Graham Bovers and Pete Paeva.
Scott Kostrick, championship leader, gets himself up past Michael Rhodes into the top 5. He separates the two Darkwing Racing McLarens and slots his McLaren nicely in between them into P4. He's done with one, and now we can set after the next one. Lewis Hammond, of course, off the back of some pretty decent results for the British driver as of late. He got on the podium last time out, P7 the week before that, so he's pretty familiar with finishing in these sorts of areas as of late. But Scott Kostrick knows that he needs all the points he can get to try and make his life easier for himself coming into it next week. Now, I believe, Dara, if I'm not going to try and do that maths actually, but it would be pretty close with Toby Hardiak not with us and Grant Miller down there in 14th. If Scott was able to drive himself onto another race victory, he might just about do it, but I'd like to think that that Grant Miller would still be within the 100-point mark, even if Scott did get himself into P1. It's currently 66 points, the difference between those two, so it might not be all said and done. But of course, if Grant Miller were to fail to finish tonight, then that will be a completely different story. So Scott has to be a little bit careful at the moment, but he'll be confident that he's got pace over the rest of this race. 45 minutes, of course, left to go to try and get himself a little bit closer to the top 3. The sooner that he can get himself past this McLaren, he's got 2 more to go after that before he gets on to the top step.
Yep, I think you're right. If he was to be winning the race right now in this position, he would be in a championship winning position, because that gap is more than 66 points between 1st and 14th in terms of what you can gain. So it is a good position for Kostrick to be in, but he needs a little bit more if he wants it wrapped up tonight, and he's losing time lap after lap to Samuel Clark and Barry Wimman, stuck behind Lewis Hammond. Sarah Cadessa's at the back of this train as well, looking to try and get through on Michael Rhodes as Kostrick looks to get through on Hammond, and just up in front. They're side by side in towards turn number 5, outside line for the championship leader. When he comes across a little bit into the braking zone, it was difficult to see. They're just in front of this shot. I think Hammond's been overtaken here. Kostrick's got the outside line, but he has the overlap. And there he goes, the Scotsman into the 3rd place, or does he? Hammond comes back through. Little bit of contact through. They go at turn 7. Is this Kostrick position? Not yet. They're still side by side.
Great move around the outside there. Committed to the speed, did Mr. Hammond, and he's held onto that position. He's got to be careful in behind him, because that's going to invite Sarah Cadesla and Mr. Kostrick into it. And Luke Bailey is involved in this one as well. 2, then 1, then 2, as Sarah Cadesla converts attack into defence. And if Luke Bailey can hang around the outside of that Mustang, it'll be a brilliant move, but it looks like he's just about being snuffed out by the time they reach the exit of that corner. Through the kink they go, one after the next. Brilliant battle here, and it's going to continue, I would imagine, because we've got drivers of a very similar pace, all fighting for a spot on the podium. Exactly what we like to see. Fingers crossed that it lasts for the remaining 3 quarters of this race. And advantage returns to Kostrick after that one. He must have got the move done at some other point there, Dara. We'll see if we can find that, because Hammond led going into the carousel. But yeah, very, very entertaining battle here at the front of the Premier class.
Yeah, great to see so many people battling hard in these early stages of the race, still in the first third, but so many of these battles going to be important later on into the race, you would expect. This is the move back from Lewis Hammond again. Scott Kostrick had the move almost completed, and then he went a little bit wide to allow Hammond up the inside, and that gave Hammond the run that he needed. A bit of contact didn't help either of them, but they just about managed to sort it out before they got to this left-hander, before the carousel, side by side behind as well. Just a concertina. Horrible to have to try and affect it, and that was the little mistake from Hammond that cost him the position again. He had it under control, and then he just had a little bit of a snap, and that can be the difference.
It can, yeah, and that's how it was done then. Easily done with a mistake. Kostrick will be thanking him for that one. The gap has opened up a little bit. I think it's the blue flag of who would that be? Pete Paeva potentially ahead of these drivers. So that's something that Kostrick has to be wary of as they get on the stoppers downhill into turn 5. A little bit of gravel by all of them as they all follow the number 10 slightly off the track, but still less than half a car's length separating most of these drivers on the exit of these corners. Very exciting to see. And that Mustang and the Mercedes hoping to spoil this McLaren party. As it stands, moves over to the inside to defend that one. Does Scott Kostrick. That will hamper his line a little bit on the exit as they make their way through toward the carousel. Looking around the outside, thinks better of it. Does Lewis Hammond and backs out. Kostrick's going to have to get his defensive mind on here, because these two are not giving up at all.
Yeah, they are not going to be giving an inch to each other at this stage. They are still running oh so close together. You've also got Pete Paeva just in front. He's just going to be, well, no respect to him, just a little bit in the way at the moment, just to put the cat amongst the pigeons, really. Hopefully he'll jump out of the way, because these guys are coming through pretty quickly. Hussein Savakadessa to the outside line, can't quite find the line on Michael Rhodes, but they are not leaving each other be, and they're not gapping out at all at the moment.
No, they're not, and they're getting closer and closer to Paeva. He's coming up to the start-finish straight, which is a great opportunity to let these guys pass. What he can't do is be a nuisance of himself and only let a couple of them by. Ideally, he'll let most of them by. It looks as though he's moved out the way there to proceed and let these drivers through. That's exactly what he will do, but the crucial part is how many of them will get past him by the time they reach turn 1. It looks as though Bailey will probably be part of this company. Vinciszewski's will probably miss out on that train as the Aston Martin pulls back over, but good effort there by Paeva to let these guys through, and that has invited that is Michael Rhodes all over the back of his teammate. These two have got to try and work together here, because they've got to try and hold off Sarah Cadesla while allowing Hammond to chase after Scott Kostrick. They can't be battling each other, because that'll allow, well, I was going to say the McLaren, but they're all in the McLaren. That'll allow Kostrick to get himself up the road.
Yeah, and Kostrick getting up the road is exactly, I mean, it's his obvious target. What he needs to do if he wants to win the title tonight. If he wants to have an easy time of it next week, not have to worry about anything at all, even if it's an extra point that he would require next week, it just leaves it in the back of your mind. You've got to perform. You've got to make sure that there's no mistakes. If he's got that title wrapped up, he can go into the next week with, you know, complete ease and probably do a lot better for himself than he otherwise would. So Lots of incentive for Scott here to try and run up the road, and he is away. Can he clear Lewis Hammond now? Can he get out of the slipstream? That's going to be the next key. If Michael Rhodes starts trying to fight it, then I think we could see that gap increase substantially. But for Scott, it's 5 seconds up to the top two, although they might start fighting as Woodman's right on the tail of Sam and Clark.
Yeah, there's a good 62-point gap as it stands between Kostrick and Grant Miller, which would see the difference in championship points rise to 128, and with Toby Hardiek not with us tonight, that would rise at least a little bit further, not quite across the 100-point mark as it stands. I think it'd be 84, so it'd be 16 points away as Luke Bailey spins, coming out of Canada corner. The Mercedes is around and he's managed to keep it out of the barrier. That's not what we like to see, and that means that there's one less car in that leading battle trying to get inside the top three. So as I was saying there, I think it's about a 16-point difference away from 100. So Toby Hardiek would still be within contention unless Kostrick can get himself onto the top step. If he can, and Grant Miller stays where he is, then it may well be championship said and done for the GPX driver, who's sort of been sitting pretty in, the top 3, top 4 for the rest of the season. And in the last couple of weeks, he's set the championship alive, and it could be his tonight if things go his way.
Yep, and that'll be what he's targeting now, just to pull away from the race. 38 minutes to go, very long time left in this race. Even if it's not gone too well for you so far, so much time for that to change around. But again, like I said earlier, a lot of dead time at this circuit. We are on, lap 12 now, aren't we, Joe? And we've only seen 12 trips to turn 5, 12 trips to turn 1. That's not going to get any easier as we work our way through. We're nearly at half race distance. So drivers have to make use of their overtaking opportunities when they present themselves, because we are only going to have 30, maybe just 29, in fact probably 29 laps in this race, which for an hour long probably isn't the longest, right? It's not the most amount of overtaking opportunities that you're going to get in a race so far this season, particularly when you think about other tracks that are going to be in the drivers' minds coming into this race, because there's not just going to be this one. They have to think about the season finale as well, and from what we know about that circuit, it's going to be quite an exciting one.
It is, yeah. I've been looking forward to that one ever since the calendar was released, and I think Saraka does that. We'll be looking forward to this one because he looks like he is the most likely driver to pull off an overtake in the coming stages. He's got Michael Rhodes in his target here. Is he going to send it? He defends down the middle of the track, exactly what you should do to force your opponent to think about making that move. And it was that a little touch on the gravel there by Hammond, which will be great news in the mirrors of Kostrick as he tries to extend that margin. This battle just dissipating a little bit. We had 3 or 4 laps of goodness, and now we're starting to see normal service resumes as gaps begin to break up between those drivers. Vinciszewski's is that Lamborghini in the background. Let's jump back toward the front of the order then as our leaders, as our lead pack begin to head down through turn 4 and turn 5. This is Tiek Plurg, who's got Lewis Kenyon for company right in behind him. Then further up the order with quite big gaps, it's actually Dawson, still Derbyshire, still Miller. The top 3 remain how they were, but Derbyshire not able to stay within touching distance of Dawson, similar to what we saw last week, of course. If you can keep it within 2 seconds, that can definitely be overturned in the pit sequence, but on the track so far, it's been advantage Dawson in qualifying, advantage Dawson at the start of this race, as you rightly say, Dara. Still over half an hour to go, not even at half race distance yet. Still lots to happen, but early signs at the front of the order here is that it might be Dawson's day if he can keep it on the track.
It very well might be, and that's really going to be his target. That has worked in the past. He's got to make sure that it works again. It was a good result last week. He's trying to replicate it again, and it looks like it's going in the same manner, I think it's fair to say. As they run their way now down in towards 6, 7 and 8 with Andrew Fellows and Wesley Van Ren. Fellows trying to make his way through. This Mercedes car a little bit further off the back. You've got that top 6, and then it's kind of the rest at the moment, isn't it? You've got 7 seconds between 6 cars, and then it's another 9 seconds back to Sarah Cadessa, Luke Bailey, Cotton, Van Ren, Fellows. Not that far behind of the P6 man.
Yep.
Has that just changed, or am I crazy? Has Sarah Cadessa made a mistake there? Because was he not just in that
I don't think
7-second
so.
window? Oh, okay,
maybe he has. Yeah, well, actually, yeah, Vinciszewski's has got past him, and now Sarah Cadessa is right back here. So yes, you are right, Dara. I have the timing sheet in my eyes, and you found that one quicker than me. So let's see what happened to the Mustang driver. This looks like we're going through turn 7 or turn 8 before the carousel. Just a massive snap of oversteer there for the Turkish driver. Let's see how that looked on board, because it looked awfully aggressive. Let's see.
In towards the corner, everything's fine. Yeah, that just snaps around. That looks like and it looks like a very lazy spin, but almost unexplained. But it's very late on into the corner for something that, you know, looks literally like that.
Yeah, and he wasn't too eager on the power. It was quite calm going into the braking zone, got his turn in, and then, I don't know, maybe he's just asked a little bit too much laterally out of those tyres, but it wasn't the rears that did it. I think it might have just been a little bit too much ask out of the front, and then that's brought the rear round on itself, and that's not what Sarah wants to do. So that's now 2 down. Bailey is in behind him, still chasing him down as they get past. I think that's Andrew Larkman in the Access Sim Sports red McLaren, getting out the way nicely. So these two will continue their battle, and Scott Kostrick, here he is making his way under the bridge through turn 6. He's cleared about a second's gap now to Lewis Hammond on the last lap. He was only actually within the same 10th, so lapping pretty similarly are these two as Michael Rhodes begins to drop ever so slightly off the back of those guys, setting his fastest lap of the race on the last lap. However, it was still half a second away from the two drivers in front of him, so lots of time yet to be found if Michael wants to keep himself within touching distance of the top 4. So far looking good for Kostrick, who's got lots of space to drive into over the next few laps, and take quite a good effort by him. Wanted to overturn those 4.5 seconds, 5 seconds down to Mr. Barry Wenman, who is closing the gap on the race leader here. Here they are, the two McLarens at the front of the Premier Class, the two DXT liveries, of course, two DXT drivers, nearly battling it out for the class win.
They are indeed, and they have been close together all race long, but we haven't seen much of a fight so far. Yeah, it was wide from Samuel Clark, and here comes Barry Wenman. Is there a chance? Is there a push to make the move now by Barry Wenman? Let's wait and see. Really, he's losing time down this race, isn't he? I've never seen that before, particularly at Road America, but clearly the slipstream isn't working out too well. I think I remember us talking about RDSA a couple of seasons ago, Joe, with Tristan Denobriga and Luke Lucchese, who were fantastic in qualifying. And then when they got to the race, that car had no straight line speed. They'd be behind the car in front, right behind the car in front, and they just lose time down the straight, which is something that you rarely ever see. I think we're getting something similar from Barry Wenman here, which could make him quite difficult to overtake. Well, both of them quite difficult to overtake, I should say, when Scott Kostrick rocks up to the back of them, if he does.
I was hoping you were going to say, as they neatly made their way through the kink at turn 2, I thought you were going to say, and do you remember when the Acura of Denobriga took out Luke Lucchese going through turn 3 at Road America? That was only a couple of seasons ago. Hopefully we don't see the same thing of the DXT KMR drivers, but that memory flashed into my head as soon as you said RDSA there.
That's a good point, actually. I'd forgotten about that, but I timed that pretty well, didn't I, for the part of the circuit we were at. Yeah, they haven't been here this season, but the RDSA name lives on, that's for sure. Andre Muntian, issue for him somewhere. He's dropping down the order. He's had a big off somewhere because he's lost, well, over 20 seconds now. What's happened to him? Let's see, down in towards turn number 3. That rear end, is it going to step around? You could kind of see it going early into the corner. He catches it, then he loses it again on the grass, and I think he just gives up, doesn't he? Oh no, gets back on the circuit. Oh, don't tell me he hits another car.
No, he has to wait. Bangs it into reverse.
It. It's in a car park, isn't it?
Lovely, absolutely. I just had that Top Gear. Do you remember the Peugeot drivers Top Gear episode where Clarkson and Mayer would Clarkson and Mayer were driving around? And just reminded me of that. Bang it in reverse, do a 5-point turn, you'll get out the car park eventually.
Yeah, I mean, he did get out of it eventually. He just lost about 20 seconds in a heck of a lot of positions. So not exactly what Andre needed after what was a really good week last week, really. Great qualifying. Good start to the race as well for him. It's a bit of a shame that he's not been able to build on it. Pit stops though, Joe. Luke Bailey he's the first one in, just about that half race distance.
Yeah, one mistake by Luke so far. Coming out of Canada corner, a spin, managed to keep it out the barrier, so not an enforced pit stop as that number 18 Vulcan Fastness Mercedes makes his way into the pit lane. Then, as we said, I'd be doubtful that he'll take tyres. He'll just be filling up some fuel. You can see that I think it was a little fast repair there as his left-hand door just puffed out a little bit, so Luke getting that car back up to scratch before he makes his way back out onto the track. And Luke van Goortel still keeping Pedro Luis da Silva for company. However, Dara, we have a change of position because Pedro made a mistake not too long ago, and now he's got himself back ahead of Luke van Goortel, and here is how he did it.
See the replay then. Behind, unsurprisingly, Pedro Luis da Silva. He's going to find himself ahead in just a minute. How does he do it? Does it ascend to the inside at turn 5 a little bit far back? We've seen lots of drivers not send it from here. Almost seems that Luke van Goortel backed off there, and Pedro da Silva was ready for it in a weird way. I can't imagine that Luke would necessarily be saving fuel, but Pedro almost saw that one coming. Unless Pedro went to the inside line, Luke could envisage the move being made and just didn't want anything to do with it, but that would also be surprising. Happened very, very early towards the corner, didn't it?
Well, as I said a little bit earlier on, I feel like both of these drivers know that they're in a very good position and that they can both score some very good points, and that they've been very trusting drivers, very, conservative drivers who don't want to put it all out there, be too risky. So I think they're both willing to accept that they've got very similar pace in this race, and if they're going to exchange positions throughout the session, I think they'll just say, well, whoever leads come the fast lap can take the position, and I think that's exactly how it unfolded there, as Luke van Goortel sort of, as he said, let him by, doesn't want to give up too much, he's staying with him, and we'll soon see how this one unfolds as we enter the enter the second half of the race. These two will stay with each other, I'm sure, until the end, and then we'll see what happens then. So, big change in the order. Andrea Muntian picks up a black flag. He'll have to come in to serve that drive-through penalty, as half of the field have entered the pit lane at the same time then, as Ignas Vinciszewski's has done a massive jump. Oh, no, he's not. No, he hasn't. He's just overtaken them in the pit lane. He'll soon be reset back to where he was, as all those cars in behind him in the picture will probably fix up a little bit sooner. I'm not seeing that red McLaren's not up on his jack. Does he? No, I don't think he is. No one taking tyres. Who's that? Michael Rhodes, Lewis Hamilton? No. No one taking tyres, as predicted, Dara. They're all just filling up fuel. And out they go, and look at that. Scott Kostrick has been pipped by Hammond on the pit exit.
As he's now got another car to re-overtake. Samuel Clark going around means that he should be able to shorten on fuel a bit, and he's had that luxury of being able to control his pace from the front of the field, so that's interesting that he is now nearly 50 seconds in the lead in this race. So many cars in on that lap though, showing that the fuel tank can't go too much further, so I think you'd expect quite a few of the elite cars to be in relatively shortly. But here comes Lewis Hammond right ahead of Scott Kostrick. Kostrick isn't going to let him have it for too long though. The overtake was made in the pit lane, and already as they make the way towards turn 5, we're seeing Scott Kostrick try and get that move back on him and have the outside line for turn 5. Not the easiest place to get it done, but he's going to be committed.
Let's see, lots of space afforded there. The McLaren on the inside taking an awfully tight inside line there, of course. You can use so much of the runoff, and that pace advantage seems to have helped him, but he's going to put his nose up the inside. Vinciszewski's fancying it in the back of these two as well. Got to be careful not to get involved. Kostrick gets that position back, and it could go from bad to worse if Vinciszewski's makes a move here going into turn 8, which looks like it's on the cards. Yes, it is. The Lamborghini steps himself up and past, in what looked to be a good pit stop by Lewis Hammond has unfolded within half a lap. He's now a good 4, 5, 6 car lengths behind Kostrick as we enter down the carousel toward the kink.
Let's see if there's got any move from Scott Kostrick at all here, because, any move from Scott Kostrick on Scott Kostrick is what I'm trying to say, because Lewis Hammond is behind and he is, he's fading. But the move from Ignas didn't help at all. As good as me, Josh Taylor now fighting away with a couple of cars that are not in his class. That is Grant Miller and it is Barry Webber. I thought it was for the lead of the Premier class. In fact, it is Miller, Wenman, Clark in the pit lane. He should come out ahead of these guys, but he's still in pit lane. He's on pit exit now. Let's see how close it's going to be. He is just trundling to the exit. Oh, this could be close. Clark, of course, leading almost all the way up to this point. Wenman may have the chance to make the move in the pit stop cycle.
Let's see. Where is he? Has he come out already? Has he cleared turn 1?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's cleared turn 1 by an absolute country mile. Already making his way through 2 into 3. Grant Miller has done well to recover from... That's kind of caught me off guard a little bit, Tara, because I thought he had that incident with Rob Mackay at the start of the race, which threw him off a little bit, but he's obviously pitted early, got the fuel up, and he's not had to go in again, so that's grand. It seems like he's up into 3rd net, which is very good for him, and that means that it's not the maths that I did earlier between him and Kostrick is gone completely out the window. because Grant is now in third. Scott is in fourth, which means that there's work yet to be done. If Mr. Kostrick wants to convert that championship, it's unlikely to happen tonight. Let's see how things go. 25 minutes to go here. Wenman has got a bit of defending to do ahead of the Scotsman, and still Dara, that top 6 McLaren Premier Class lead continues.
Yeah, they are still rolling around like an absolute train at the moment. Clark ahead of Women, and with a comfortable lead ahead of Women and Miller now. Kostrick a little further back, Hammond and Rhodes, and they've got that gap to Sarah Decimal, so you'd be hard-pressed to argue that it's going to be any less than 6 by the end of this race, Joe, even with 24.5 minutes left. Lewis Kenyon into the pit lane now. Andrew Dawson going around. I think we're going to have 12 more laps to go here, because they shouldn't be able to complete the 12th in the 24 minutes and 20 seconds that we have left. Andrew Dawson will lead them through. So yeah, I think 12 to go, which doesn't feel like many, does it? Especially when you consider there's only a handful of overtaking spots around the lap. Sam Derbyshire is tracking him though. We'll see how quickly that lap car gets out of the way.
Yeah, lap 18, they have started now, so 12 more to go would be about right. Sets us up for about a 30 lap race, which will be very nice indeed. Pete Paeva's got to get himself out the way of the trail of the leading car, should I say, in this trailing Aston Martin there in Simcoach, under all sorts of pressure from Vulcan. This is the closest that these two have been since the exit of turn 3 at the start of the race earlier on, and it's advantage to Sam Derbyshire, it seems, at the moment, because he's got that Corvette switched on and he's all over the back of that Mercedes. And I was going to say a little bit earlier on that even if Dawson finished both of these rounds this week and next week in first, so long as Sam Derbyshire's in second, it's not going to be enough. He came into the race tonight 34 points behind. There's only a 10-point difference between first and second, so we bring it down to 24 and then 14. If it was to stay like this, Dawson would need 12 rounds in a season rather than 10 if he was to overdo that. So it needs to be almost season perfection by the Mercedes, and he needs to rely on Derbyshire having another mistake and finishing outside the top 3 if he's going to be able to take that championship away from him. At the moment, though, can't think about that. He's got to think about defending away from that Corvette, who's putting him under all sorts of pressure here. Let's see what happens as they go down into turn 1.
It's never easy to have to rely on the mistakes of others, particularly if it's Sam Derbyshire, particularly when he's about a quarter of a second behind you. So it's a difficult position for Andrew Derbyshire.
That's a new one.
Hey. Well, whoever that is, they're definitely winning the championship, that's for sure. But yeah, for Andrew Dawson at the moment, it's a difficult spot to be in. He's having to defend. But I guess in a way, would it help him to fight Sam Derbyshire here? Of course, he needs Sam Derbyshire to go further back. He doesn't want to hit him. He doesn't want to cause him damage, but maybe a little bit of battling, maybe a little bit of, or could increase the possibility of a mistake from Sam if what he needs. I don't know how much gamesmanship he'll play here, but he's got the time to work with. Let's see how he plays. I doubt that'll happen, but I mean, you've got to run through the possibilities this close to the end of the championship with these two fighting for the title.
Yeah, I think Dawson will be keen to try and defend. There's no good, obviously, letting him through. You don't want to risk damage, but if he can keep that 10-point buffer this week, then you never know what might happen. Suzuka is such a challenging circuit with so many corners where drivers can make mistakes and where you're quickly met with a barrier. Let's not forget, it's probably in Dawson's mind that if he can just withstand this pressure this week, bring that deficit down 2 weeks in a row, it may well help him. It may well mean that that Derbyshire is feeling a little bit more pressure than what he might do if he were to win this race tonight, and that might be the difference that Dawson needs, psychologically at least, to put that Corvette driver under a little bit of additional pressure. Doesn't want to make it too easy for him, doesn't want to defend too harshly either, which might see them both going off the track in the same instance. What I can tell you though, Dara, is it's about to get exciting, because it looks as though Derbyshire might be having a little bit of a second wind in the second half of this race. 2/3 gone, 20 minutes left to go here, and we're counting down the laps. About 10 or 11 left to go here.
Yeah, let's see. Is there any time left now? Well, of course there's time left, but is there any chances left? Big one for Sam Derbyshire to make this one work for him. Not down towards the corner this time by, but he will have another 10 tours of this circuit to try and complete this move. 20 minutes, 2/3 of the race gone. This middle third almost flying by, really, isn't it? With the strategy battle and the little battles that we've seen at the front of the Premier class, but since the pit stops, it's gapped out a bit there. It's stayed close at the front of the elite class, and Sam Derbyshire is on the tail. But again, slipstream almost non-existent down towards Tumwell. You can't really do anything at all down in towards the opening corner of the lap time, even if it was an easy overtaking spot.
Well, he has got a little bit closer on the back of that Mercedes from this time last lap. He's all over him going through the first corner there, under braking. It could be his chance coming up very shortly. Let's see what the exit's like coming out of here. Looks like it's gone in the favour of that Mercedes. Yes, he has. Brilliant exit by Andrew Dawson coming out of that corner. That's going to give him a little bit of a buffer, make it a little bit harder for Sam Derbyshire to make a decision going into 5. I don't think we'll be seeing any last gasp lunges from these guys, because Derbyshire knows that he can just stay where he is, and he still goes into the final round with a pretty good advantage. What he'll be hoping for is that Dawson drives himself off the circuit by spending too much time looking in his mirrors, but these two guys are so experienced behind these machines that I'd be hard pressed to imagine that one happening. They'll both trust each other to give the space and to not to make contact unnecessarily, but it looks like Derbyshire is giving him, well, making him work for every point at the moment, and they're still going toe to toe, going through the carousel now onto lap 20 here. And it's been I was worried actually, Dara, that it was going to be a bit of a free ride for Dawson, because the times didn't look great. You know, hanging around that 2-second gap for quite some time was Derbyshire at the start of this one, but he's brought it right back within to a quarter of a second, between a quarter and a half of a second, and again getting ever so closer time after time, lap after lap, as we enter into Canada corner. Can't seem to set it up on the exit of the final corner though to make it work into turn 1.
Yeah. He needs to do a little bit more than that, doesn't he? Or try and find somewhere else to really make this effective through the final corner. They come again. Is there a chance towards turn 1? A little bit wider from Sam Derbyshire, carrying all the momentum, all the speed that he possibly can, and they rise over the crest, and the cameraman gets all confused of which way the cars are going as we see them running down in towards turn number 1. He's 4/10 back. He lost about 700 that lap. It's not much, but it's enough to just keep him far enough away and keep him at arm's length. And for Andrew Dawson, I think that will be enough. Hayden Miller losing time as well in P3 as he's all alone in that position. Kenyon and Plurg working together in 4th and 5th, but again, they're a little bit off the pace as well. Pedro Luis da Silva and Luke Van Gortel, they're about at the same distance as Derbyshire and Dawson right now, but that's for 6th and 7th, and then the gaps open up the further back you go in the elite class. So this is really where the battles are at in the entirety of the elite class, and it's for the 2 drivers fighting for the lead and the 2 drivers fighting for the title.
Yeah, let me just make the point that we aren't missing anything by spending all of our time focusing on these 2 drivers. As you rightly said, Dara, the only significant battle going on is between Pedro Luis da Silva and Luke Van Gore. Also, if I see that one jumping around, we'll be sure to jump on board with one of them and see how things go. But aside from that, only a couple of drivers within a second, not too many. Check Plurg is gaining a little bit on Lewis Kenyon, and Samuel Clark has Josh Taylor for company behind him, but that is the Premier Class leader defending against the Elite Class Mustang in P10. So hopefully we don't see those 2 getting too close together. Let's see, Pedro and Luke Van Gortel coming out of turns 7 and 8 as they head through the 9-10 carousel, about equidistant to what we saw from Derbyshire and Dawson. A little bit further up the road, 3 cars in between this pair and the lead pair, and it looks as though they're getting a little bit closer again, getting through the final couple of corners on the exit of Canada, making their way through 13 and 14. We're building up, Dara. I hope we get a move at some point, because if we go the next 15 minutes in this kind of order, it'll be a little bit of a disappointment.
It will. We've got, 8 laps to decide this one. There is time. There are still positions to be won, particularly in the Premier Class as well. Only a couple of seconds between some of the top places there. But this is a circuit. I do feel that you do risk getting races like this. Purely because it is difficult to get those overtakes done. And once you get through that pit stop cycle, there's not too many corners where you can then gain or lose the time to make up for it, really. So it is possible to happen here. So it means you've got to make use of the opportunities when they arise to you, which is what we're going to have to see Sam Derbyshire do, what we're going to have to see maybe Plurg do, but that's his teammate maybe not going to fight that one too hard. Or, as I was about to say, perfectly timed, Joe, Luke Van Gortel on the back of Pedro Luis da Silva. They're almost just running around waiting for that last couple of laps to make the move. They don't want to make a mistake now and feel a little bit silly because they had more time. I think that's really where the mindsets are at right now. But it means that we probably have to wait a little bit longer, to be honest, to get those final battles right at the end of the race. Hoyland getting a bit confused with the laps car. They sort of that into towards second.
Absolutely. Then Hoyland rocking the Of course, with Brick Car 24-hour livery, a little bit ahead of schedule, which is probably my fault, to be honest. I didn't think that he would have it on, but here we are. So a little sneak peek at what we'll be rocking in a couple of weeks' time. In fact, I think it's 2 weekends' time from now, as he gets himself past Danny Weir. Didn't do too much to put up a defence on that one. Did the Porsche. That's his old teammate and current teammate into the series nicely by. Another Mustang trying to get himself through is Josh Taylor. This is on the leader of the Premier class, Samuel Clark, so he's got to be careful not to make it too much of an issue. It might serve Samuel a good, might serve him quite a lot to let him through. Here he goes up the inside. The Mustang defending around the outside. Goes Clark, making it a little bit difficult for himself here because Barry Wenman is in behind him. But I think, oh God, side by side, rubbing doors there between the McLaren and the Mustang. Lovely move around the outside if he can make that one stick. Yes, he can. Josh Taylor up and past the Premier class leader. No points for that one. He'll be disappointed with that, but probably for the best that he's up and through. Barry Wenman wasn't really putting him under too much pressure, of course, teammate of the current race leader, so if he does catch up to the back of the McLaren ahead, the 55, I doubt we'll see too much of an effort to try and take the lead, of course. With the championship standings in mind, Clark comes into tonight in P7, Barry in P9, so it probably benefits Clark a little bit more in his fight, of course. Only being 12 points away from 4th, this kind of result could move him right into that position, past Bailey, past Hammond and past Rivers.
Good indeed. And Vavers, word on him, because we haven't spoken much about it. It's because he's only P15. He won the last time he was in a SRI race, but it's just not gone well for him tonight. Nearly a full lap down on his class leader, and going to be picking up some scraps in terms of points. Scraps all the same, but not the kinds of triple digits that he was enjoying a couple of weeks ago. It just goes to show, I think, really in that Premier class, how many drivers have been able to perform at the top. Clark and Wenman now at the front of the field, they haven't really had many chances, if any, to win races so far this season, and yet they are, managing this beautifully at the front of the field between them. Scott Kosrick's been there before. Lewis Hamilton was there last week, but it's just good to see newer names at the top of the order in that Premier class, because it keeps that championship close. Well, maybe not necessarily for the championship lead, but for all those positions just below, particularly the top 5.
Absolutely right then. So the gap at the front of the race overall, the overall race lead, starting to settle down a little bit. 6-7 tenths now. That initial spell by Derbyshire seems to have been thwarted by the championship challenger of Dawson. I wanted to make a comment on that one, Dara, because we've seen a mixed bag of results. Well, actually, no, that's not the right way to put it. We've seen a sort of a tale of two different stories between Dawson and Derbyshire, of course. And I'll let your thoughts on which one you would prefer. Obviously, the ultimate prize is to win the championship, but for Andrew Dawson to potentially not win the championship, having, as it stands, finished every round of the season inside the top 4, having got himself on the podium on 6 out of 8 occasions, and the other 2 race victories, and the other 2 just inside the top 4, to not be in the lead of the championship speaks volumes about the sort of quality that Derbyshire's brought to this championship, of course. 4 wins in a row, 5 wins overall, 5 podiums in a row, which is can be extended tonight if he finishes inside the top 3. And it's a P5 and a P13 for the championship leader. That are his 2 outside results. And that P13, I would imagine that Derbyshire would have thought that would have done him more damage than it's turned out to be. But for Dawson to yet to finish outside the top 4 and not be in the lead of the championship, that's just, I mean, I'm not really sure what you can say. It's a testament to Derbyshire, but at the same time, you must be feeling like, what more do I have to do to lead this bloody championship?
Yeah, it just goes to show how crazy the level of consistency needs to be leading a championship like this. It's such a high level, and you have to be performing week after week. Derbyshire's just been able to pull off those results. It hasn't necessarily taken too much more speed or pace week on week, but it's just been an incredible run of results, really, from the start of the season to now. For Dawson, he's been right there and on him, but it's just that consistent loss of points over the course of a few weeks that have meant that it's a very difficult hill to climb, and then he's searching for little mistakes from South Derbyshire. Even if it's a 10-second mistake that costs him second place here, it's a big mistake that you wouldn't expect all the same, and it's a difficult spot to be in, because you're right, consistency has been incredible for most of these drivers all season long. Andrew Dawson has been both of them, Dawson and Derbyshire, have been the marker. It's just Derbyshire's been able to get those results when it's mattered, which is why he's in the position that he is. But it has been great to see these two tussle all season long, and delighted that it looks like it's going to go down to that final race in 7 days' time.
Absolutely then. So on to lap 25, the leaders take us. There'll be 5 more to go, I believe, as we cross over the line. Chequered attacking on Lewis Kenyon to get himself inside the top 4. That is Vulcan Motorsports Gold leading Vulcan Motorsports Red, and these two, Pedro Luis da Silva and Luc van Goortel, still sharing the same piece of track. Those two have been side by side for the vast majority of this one, and that Porsche is so close in behind the McLaren as they make their way through the first corner. We've got some good little pairings going on here. The two leaders, a battle for 4th and a battle for the top 6. Van Ren not too far behind Shane Cotton in his pursuit of a top 8 finish in his championship order, which I'm not sure, there it is, it's would be a pretty decent result to get Van Ren inside the top 8 coming off the back of a P2 finish around Sebring last week, so he's trying to add that consistent points tally. The Porsche looks like it's got a decent run, but it's a pretty short run up the hill, under the bridge, into the next braking zone. They'll have to stay put, the 114, for the time being.
Not making any moves again just yet. The 114, he's lurking. He's making sure that he's well known in that battle, and even with that slowdown, he will, I'm sure, come back and be a very much force to be reckoned with for Pedro Luis da Silva in that little tussle for P6. Interesting to see how this Kenyon plug debacle ends, because, of course, teammates neither really fighting for the championship. They are just going to do well for the team's championship in this race, I guess, but they're going to fight for 4th place. It's not necessarily a podium. I'm not necessarily sure either of them are going to remember if they get a 4th place. We'll see if they do go for it. There are only 4 laps left on conclusion of this one, so yeah, interested to see, I think, how this one is going to play out. As inside line for Wesley Van Ren on Shane Cotton. As Shane Cotton goes so far wide, he picks up a slowdown penalty. That's going to cut out any effectiveness he has to make that position back up again.
Very unfortunate for Lewis Kenyon with the point to the team's championship. Imagine finishing 4th, and yet your points don't count towards the team standings, of course. Just the top 2 of the night for each team get counted in the overall team's championship standings. And with Sam Derbyshire in P2 and Hayden Miller in P3, all for Vulcan Motorsports Gold, poor little old Lewis Kenyon having one of his best results of the season, of course. He's only had one of the top 4 to his name. That was a fortnight ago, and at the moment he's on for his joint best result of the season. And yes, it'll count for himself, of course, great news, but it won't count in the teams because your teammates are doing so well at the front of the order.
Yep, and there's something nice about that, isn't there, really? Because you're having a nice day, you're having a nice drive, you're doing well for yourself, and you're so well supported by your teammates that, I mean, they obviously wouldn't want to, but they could just, come to the pit lane and leave, and they'd lose that in terms of the drivers, but they wouldn't lose anything out for the team. That's just how consistent Vulcan have been so far this season. Plurg and Kenyon just almost, I'm sure, having a bit of a natter, having a bit of a chin wag on the way home in the final few laps. They're just making sure they drag those cars into position, because there isn't too much to gain, and there isn't really too much to lose, but you want to make sure that you finish the race in the position that you've earned, and if something goes awry for the drivers in front, you're in position to pick up the points for the team anyway. Inside line now, that is Ignacy Zrzewski's, who's still trying to recover through the field. He's trying to overtake the 2 leaders in the Premier class. He's 12th overall now, behind 10 elite drivers and 1 Premier driver, and that is Samuel Clark. If he can get himself through on Samuel Clark easily, he can have, well, not really a run at anybody else. Josh Taylor a couple of seconds up the road, but we'll see if he can get through there. The problem for Samuel Clark here, though, is dealing with this issue might allow Barry Windman, or give Barry Windman a chance at a move, and with only 3 laps left, you don't really want to give him too much of an inch, do you?
Well, my first thought to this one, Dara, is flashbacks to Canada, when Samuel Clark was leading in class, what would have been his best finish of the season by a long shot, and then he got contact going through turn 2 and 3 by an elite class driver that saw him finish in an eventual P3. So he's got to let Ignace by. He's got to be hopeful that his teammate doesn't fancy being overly aggressive. There we go. The elite class driver is through. That will be a sigh of relief inside the cockpit for Samuel Clark, I'm sure. And now let's see what happens between the 2 teammates. I've got a funny feeling that they'll be in the Discord together, probably talking away. And like I said earlier, we saw Barry Windman coming off the throttle when he could have got himself past Samuel Clark going into turn 1, decided to let him stay ahead. So I would imagine that will be probably more of the same to come between these two drivers. Hasn't really been the best season so far for Barry Wendman. His best finish was in round 5 in P5, so he will be thoroughly satisfied to get himself onto the podium. And I think Samuel Clark, after what happened around Canada, deserves his chance at a race victory. So my prediction will be that as long as neither of them make a mistake individually, that these two positions will probably stay as they are, and it will be a very good day in the office for DXC Kmart.
But it's a race win, though, Joe. It is a race win, isn't it? It's dangling there like a carrot for Barry Wendman, isn't it? He can see it, he can sense it. It's just annoying in a way that you're right. It is his teammate. You don't really want to put yourself, either of you, out of position here. Scott Kostrick would love it if these two came together. It would basically hand him a title, quite frankly, in all but name. But they're doing a great job at the moment, Clark and Wendman, just to keep it calm and keep it, I don't want to say mundane, but really that is the word. You know, not giving us too much to talk about. So making me sit here and think about extra words that I can add to this sentence to make it seem like they're going to battle. And that's not going to help, because Barry Wendman's gone off the road and he's even further back. And all of the words we've been saying, Joe, about them maybe fighting, maybe isn't worth it in the first place at all. Did I see a change? I did. Plug and Kenyon, they've swapped for P4 in the elite class.
Oh, there we go. There we go then. The Lamborghini is up and past the Corvette. Might be having to defend a little bit here going down toward turn 1. Very close in behind is that Corvette. Steps out to the outside line. How's the brace going to be for that Corvette? Doing battle, these two. They can sort of afford to do battle in their own little championships. The team ahead of them, Miller and Derbyshire, doing what they need to do to extend that margin at the front of the team's championship order, of course, coming into it tonight. 200 points or so clear of the Axis Sim Sports Boo team. So these two free to drive how they see fit. And Andrew Dawson is holding that margin comfortably at the moment, between 6 and 8 tenths every lap. The gap between these two drivers as we enter the final 3 minutes here. Lap 28, we expect 30 laps in this one. A nice almost dead 2-minute lap times set by these drivers means that it's a nice round of 30 laps for us to get under our belts. Jan Osberg, the closest driver on the track as they head through the kink, chasing after Danny Phillips. A little bit of fun for these guys down toward the back of the order, but Osberg with that black flag probably have to come into the pit lane before the session is done.
Yep, and there isn't long to go until that session is completed. A lap and a half for Andrew Dawson and South Derbyshire. 2 laps to go for Danny Weir and Grant Miller as they fight for 11th and for 12th here. Black flag over Jan Osberg. He'll have to serve that, but he's going to go from 14th to 14th after serving that. He's got 55 seconds in hand. He should be absolutely fine. Weir and Miller, they will be battling very shortly. They've just missed the white flag. They're not that far ahead of Dawson and Derbyshire on the road, but far enough ahead that they will get that second lap, and they will be, I believe, maybe with the exception of Rob Mackay, the final 2 drivers across the line when the checker flag is flying. So keep an eye on them towards the end. That could be a battle we see the tail end of. But as we get on to the final, that white flag flies. Derbyshire sets the fastest lap of the race. He's giving it everything to get that win.
You might want to help me out here, Dara, if I just continue to waffle for a couple of minutes, because I think, based on my maths, it might be enough as it stands for Scott Kostrick to bring home this championship. Now, I don't want to go too gung-ho on that assumption, because I could be wrong. But with Grant Miller down there in 12th as it stands, he'll bring home 26 points, trailing, I think, was it 66? 70 coming into this one. And so that means he'll be over 100 points behind going into the final round, as will Vevers, as will Hardiak. And so it sounds to me as though it could be a good night for Kostrick if things remain as they are.
One thing I would say to that, though, would be that the gap to Hardiak was only what was it coming into this race?
4.
Where is it? 4. Okay, so but that there we go.
Of
then.
Course,
do
yes,
we know
of
that
course,
he's not turning up, because he would need to win the race to get over that 100-point threshold ahead of Hardiak. So I think, yeah, he'd have to win the race if he's going to wrap it up tonight over Hardiak, even though he's not here. I mean, we're talking about we're going to be in the 80s and the 90s, and he just has to turn up. But I think officially it's still going to be live.
No, you're right. I'd forgot about that. Forgot about that assumption. I think I had it in my head for some reason that Kostrick was going to win the race, which is obviously not the position that he finds himself in. So it would be a 16-point. Kostrick would need a 16-point net swing next week, which is maybe easily done. As he said, he would just have to show up and he would just have to score points somewhere outside the top 10, really, which I think he'll be well up for. So absolutely right. Not over yet. Close, though. He's ticked off a couple of extra drivers. Miller out the picture. Viva's out the picture. So long as things stay as it is, of course. Hammond putting him under a little bit of pressure toward the end of this one as our leaders set off. Oh, never mind, Dara. We've been jumped the gun here. Dawson has won the race ahead of Derbyshire and Miller, the top three.
Yeah, a bit of a procession towards the end anyway, but yeah, Dawson and Derbyshire, only 8 tenths between them in the end. It was running close, but not quite close enough for Dawson to make a move. Meanwhile, Samuel Clark and Barry Webber a little bit closer in that Premier class in their battle for the win. They're coming out of Canada corner now. A few cars in front of them in the elite class, but I don't think there's going to be a chance for Barry Webber. Samuel Clark has led this race from start, well, if he gets on the final corner, to finish, Joe.
Absolutely. Let's see how it goes then. Looking for a good exit is the 56, but it's exactly what these two wanted. The DXT KMR drivers come home to get their joint best results of the season. A win for Clark, a P2 for Wemman, his first podium of the season, and Samuel's, I think it's Samuel's second podium of the season. Yes, it is. So those two will go side by side in formation all the way around, I'm sure. Okay, never mind. Samuel Clark doesn't fancy that. He's had enough. Maybe it's a beer for him on a Thursday night to celebrate. Andrew Dawson, Sam Derbyshire and Hayden Miller have converted their podium places at the front. I was convinced that we were going to get a 30th lap there, Dara. In the end, it was only 29, so I'd be curious to see how long was left on the clock when they crossed the line on that penultimate lap, because it must have been a matter of seconds, if that. But apologies to those three. I missed the procession around the final corner, but they won't mind that. It's another win under the belt for Dawson. He makes it 2 from 2 and 3 podiums off the bounce. That brings the points difference down to 24 points in favour of Derbyshire as we enter the final round of the season at Suzuka next week.
Yeah, Danny Weir and Grant Miller were two of the last drivers to cross the line, and they were only about a tenth and a half apart when they did go past Barney up there in the flag booth. But great race all round for a lot of the drivers. Not too many mistakes outside of that first 5-10 minutes, and valuable points on the board. And we have some maths that we can easily work out for next week now, Joe.
Absolutely right. And again, I think it's getting, well, I don't want to say, it's not too clear, is it? We've still got a lot that can happen in the Premier class. Still quite a few permutations there. It's getting easier sorry, I'm talking about the elite class. Still a few permutations in the elite class. Lovely formation there between all of the Vulcan drivers. I must catch on with that there. 2x2 they go. 3 Corvettes and a Lamborghini. Looking good, and then that Mercedes getting involved at the back. And in fact, Dara, they may be doing that because they may have converted the Teams Championship, of course, coming into it tonight with the best part of a 200, I think it's 204 points of an advantage. And with the amount of points that they scored tonight, surely that's enough for them to have brought home the championship. I think they believe it, and for the sake of it, we'll go along with it as well. So I've never seen a formation quite like that, and one of them's gone.
Whoa. I mean, to be fair, they've been so far in front for so long, you'd be forgiven for forgetting about it entirely, that they hadn't won it already. To be honest with you, they have been so dominant this season with all of their cars. And again, qualified today, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. I mean, there is no beating that kind of consistency from a team. So, yeah, congrats to all of them. But we've seen it coming, haven't we, from week number 1.
Absolutely then. So with that, let's take a look at the final results of the penultimate round of the season. There's only one more of these to go after tonight. So let's have a look first at the elite class order. So sim coach Andrew Dawson converted from pole position for the 2nd week in a row to bring home maximum points for himself. And sim coach, he won out ahead of Sam Derbyshire, championship leader, by just over half a second come the checkered flag. That started a procession of Vulcan drivers, of course. Vulcan Motorsports gold, red and gold. Vincenzeski's was up there from the start, sadly for him, outside the top 10 in the end. But it's Derbyshire leading Miller ahead of Plurg and Kenya in the top 5. Luke Van Gortel in the end did enough to beat out Pedro Luis da Silva. MJK leading the GPX SimSports team in the end. It was a 6-second gap there. Something must have happened to Pedro toward the end. Thomas Pugh finishing in 8th ahead of Jamie Foster. 2 SimCoach machines inside the top 9. Then Josh Taylor inside the top 10, finishing in P10 for Phoenix Racing Red. And Ignas Vinchizevskis, who had an issue in turn 1 on lap 1, was unable to recover himself in the end, finishing in P11. Matt Hoyland got himself up from the back, just 2 places in the end. He had another issue a little bit later on with Jan Osberg coming over and through turn 6. In the end, it's P12 for the 123. Danny Phillips and Thomas Critchell rounding out at the back. Phillips will score points. Critchell did not finish the race. 27 laps down, barely got himself going for the Darkwing Racing Red Mustang.
And then, of course, over in our Premier class, in the end, it was a win for Samuel Clark and DXT Motorsports Kmart, who in the end got a 1-2 as Barry Wemman followed him up in 2nd place. Scott Kostrick 3rd and Michael Rhodes was 4th. He was just ahead of his own teammate Lewis Hammond. Teammates all over the field today, running close together. That was the top 5 full of McLarens. It was broken in the end by Luke Bailey, who finished in 6th, his first finish this season, I believe, off of the podium. A consistent, relatively quiet result for him. Points on the board is what matters. Sarah Tesla, 7th, another quiet race from him, but again, points on the board is exactly what he needed. And Wesley Van Rijn, Shane Cotton, and Andrew Fellows of Flatline Racing rounded out our top 10. Danny Weir and Grant Miller, the only other drivers within a minute of our race winner, and they were inside the top 12. Rob Mackay, the last driver on the overall lead lap, he was a minute and 16 down to Samuel Clark. And then for Graham Vavers, a week winner 2 weeks ago, it was only 14th. Pippi Ava was 15th in his Aston Martin. Andrew Larkman was the other driver a lap down. Jan Osberg was 2 laps down after that black flag late on. But sadly for Andre Matian and for John Ludbrook, they didn't really get going in this race.
So, a comment by Mr. Kostrick in the chat. He will be away next week on holiday, Dara. So,
hello.
That does change things ever so slightly, because I think we said it's going to be somewhere around 16 or 18 points that Kostrick would have needed to score. And so if Hardiak turns up next week, then all he'll need to do is finish the race in, oh, there you go, in a very decent position. So it's not actually that straightforward for Hardiak next week. He still needs a very positive result. So Scott, you may have to find a bar somewhere, or maybe just the hotel room, to listen to us to see how that one happens while you're enjoying a nice time out in Morocco. But, excuse me, there is a lot that Toby has to do next week, if, of course, he's with us. If not, then he can celebrate a little bit early, and he can win the championship in style by not even needing to attend the final race, which would be some way to do it then. So, that concludes round 9. We've got one more to go next week at Suzuka. But first, let's bring in a couple of our drivers waiting for us in the interview booth for a quick chat. I'll get things set up as always. Quite a few of them in there, Dara. So let's pick out our 2 race winners to begin with, and I'll get things set up on my side.
Yep, we'll have a chance to talk to Andrew Dawson in just a minute after another great result from him. Consistency has been his key, and once again, he's been able to put himself right at the front of the field. It wasn't the easiest race overall, that's fair to say, but in the end, I think it's fair. It's also fair to say, I've said that a lot, haven't I? That he deserved that win, held off Sam Derbyshire, and very happily, we can bring him in now. Andy Dawson, welcome in. First of all, can you hear us? Oh, we can't. Normally that works a treat. Andy,
it does.
Are you there? He's not there. We're gonna come back to Andy Dawson.
I am here now.
Oh, he
he's
is
there.
here.
Oh, I dragged him out. He's back again. Andy, sorry. You here now? Can you hear us?
I'm here now. Yeah, sorry, my disc.
Perfect, lovely.
All right,
That's-
I've already had to close it mid race, so it's not going well on a technology front.
That's all right, Andy. It was that's a first for me, I must say. Normally, Dara's with "Can you hear us?" and everyone's straight in there. But that was fine. Hey, the technology might not be doing good on Discord, but it's certainly doing you well on the racetrack. That's the second win in a row. Your first back-to-back victories of the season. You bring that margin down to 24 points. You must be looking forward to next week. Although I think you've said maybe not your most suited circuit around Suzuka, but talk us through that one. Of course, led from pole. Seemed like it was a pretty comfortable first stint. Bit of pressure after the pit stops, but in the end, you saw out the race victory quite comfortably.
Yeah, I sort of found myself sort of multitasking for the first 20 minutes because I was every straightaway I was desperately trying to find the button to close Discord because I was just getting these horrific stutters through the first 15 minutes of the race. So that was Difficult, difficult to manage. But I think personally, I thought my driving was a little bit messy tonight, but quite a few like careless errors. But I think eventually I've ended up getting it across the line, close to Sam, and Sam drove an excellent race.
I mean, you say Sam drove an excellent race. You just drove it that little bit better. You made those mistakes, but you were able to mitigate them. What was the feeling like in the car? Yes, of course, you had those Discord problems, but in the last 20 minutes or so, when Sam was right there, did you ever really feel that he was close enough to have a go, or did you feel like your exits were good enough to make sure that you kept him at arm's length?
No, I think I was perfectly comfortable that he wasn't going to go for some crazy sort of send, because I don't think he really got close enough. He probably got within about 0.3. I think 0.3 is that sort of like area where it starts to become quite risky to take that dive. But I felt fairly comfortable in myself that in those sort of like long corners like carousel, I could really extend that gap by maybe a tenth or so. Those slightly longer corners really suiting the Merc.
And so looking at the championship then, again, it comes down, like I said, to 24 points. I'm sure you're sort of taking it quite calm and cool, collected as you come into it. But does it play on your mind at all that it's kind of out of your hands? Even if you win the race next season, next week, you're still relying on Derbyshire to slip up somewhere, because obviously there's only a 10-point difference between first and second. He's been right there with you ever since. And yeah, I'm just wondering what your frame of mind is from that point of view. Is it just, it is what it is? You know, you'll see where you end up, or are you hoping that you can try and pip him there right at the end?
Honestly, I mean, if I come first next week and Sam comes second, and I lose out by what, 10 points or whatever, it really doesn't fuss me really, because I've had a really enjoyable season. Great season to sort of almost close off this chapter of league racing for maybe 6 months or so, whilst I tend to family. So I think this has been a really good league, a really good season just to sort of round it off.
Yeah, and you must be, I mean, I think that your finishing results, of course, we've highlighted it at a couple of points tonight, yet to finish outside the top 4 all season long. 9 races gone, 1 left to go. If you can finish that off nicely and put a bow on it next week, that'll be a brilliant season, as we said in the broadcast. Difficult to imagine that a season of that level of consistency hasn't brought home, or might not have brought home, a title. But I guess that just shows that, you know, Sam's incredible pace. Even when he's had a couple of weeks off it, he's been there pretty much every other week, and he's taking you right down to the line.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just credit to Sam for his consistency over those sort of 4 races where he could put a performance together week after week after week, you know, and that's credit to Sam's incredible improvement over the past 12 to 18 months. He's gone from just sort of joining a sim coach group session once in a while, and then all of a sudden he's there every week. He's improving, and he's now part of the sim coach team. And I mean, that's just credit to his commitment and willpower to keep on making those improvements.
Absolutely right, absolutely. Good stuff, mate. Well, thanks for joining us. Congratulations, of course, your first back-to-back set of victories of the season, so that must feel good. And before we let you go, speak to our other race winner. If there's anyone that you would like to give a shout out to, you can go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, honestly, I think just same every week. Credit to you guys. Great league, organisation. Proud for SimCoach to sponsor you guys in this league. So I think that is definitely top of the list. Obviously, the SimCoach is a fantastic organisation. We are going places, and there's lots of exciting things coming up. To Sam as well. Sam gives me a great race week in, week out, just like the rest of the Vulcan guys. All very, very talented drivers. So I hope they just keep on pushing on, because they've definitely got the quality to go places.
Yes.
Okay. Dara is with us.
That's all right. Yeah, but I think great season for you, Andy, and yeah, well said. I think there. Don't let
Absolutely.
you go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cheers, Andy. Thanks so much for joining us. And yeah, hopefully we'll catch you next week.
Guys,
Cheers,
Good.
mate. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Andy.
Sorry, Dara. Oh, Dara's left himself and he's left you in here.
Yeah.
So there,
Yeah.
there we go. There we
Yeah.
go. Well, one
Good
of the
to know.
messiest interviews that we've done with some minor problems, but that's okay.
Ah.
It's all part of the live gig. I did realise there, Dara, I threw you under the bus there because I normally close the interview and I was for some reason thinking that you were gonna wrap it up. So you were probably not ready to come in there. And it's just made the matter go from bad to worse. So I apologise for that. But at least we've
panicked.
reset now. We've reset now.
I was panicking and I dragged myself out and it was all going wrong. But yeah, Andrew Dawson, though, one of our race winners, not the only race winner. I dragged myself into a chat with Samuel Clark and I'm going to drag him back in here. He joins us now. Samuel, and he quacks the second he enters. Can you hear us?
What is going on?
Sorry, the soundboard turned on. Hello, gents. How are we?
Hello, mate. I don't think the broadcast would have picked that up because it was incredibly quiet, but it would have been hilarious if it had. First of all, mate, massive congratulations to you. I must say, we were egging you on around Canada. It didn't happen for you then, although you did have a very strong result. But you finally got that race victory that you've deserved for the large portions of the season. First of all, let me just ask you simply, how does it feel?
Yeah, it feels good. It might not have looked it, but it was quite a stressful race due to some bad fuel calculations from iRacing. But I was helped through from the team with some very quick math on fuel.
And I mean, what were the conversations towards the end of that race? Because obviously you had your teammate right behind you all the way through that. Was that almost like a holding pattern? Was there a safety net there? Or were you thinking that you two could battle towards the end?
I think the intention there was to have a nice battle after the pits, but yeah, my fuel was something like 9 litres short of what I'd set or what we was reporting in the auto fuel. So those conversations were basically your lifting coach needs to be a lot more aggressive, reporting each lap. The fuel spend to basically just manage that fuel to cross the final lap with 1 lap of fuel to go. So nerve-wracking stuff, but Barry was fantastic, right there with me throughout the whole race, and hell of a rear gunner and a teammate.
Talk me through a little bit what it was, how it feels in the team at the moment, because that's a cracking result. I think it'll probably be DXC's first 1-2 of the season, first 1-2 in a long while, so it must be an extra help. You getting your first victory alongside your teammate 1-2 must be a great feeling in the team at the moment.
Oh, certainly. I mean, there's been a lot of, it's been quite an unlucky season for myself, and I think for broadly the DX team, we've just been caught up in things that sometimes were out of our control. We've just been unlucky. So to sort of finally get this result, I think will be a good boost for morale, frankly.
And how does that put you frame of mind, or how are you preparing for Suzuka next week? I've been hearing mixed feelings about arriving at that circuit. Is it a circuit that you enjoy? Is it something that you might get a little bit more impetus from this result to go on and try and get another one, or are you in two minds about that next week?
I love Suzuka. It is one of my favourite tracks. I think I can perform quite well there, and I just did it on Sunday in frankly monsoon conditions. So, and that resulted in a P2. So I'm quietly confident for Suzuka.
That's very, very good then. So that will add a nice little margin onto your championship results, and it may well have actually boosted you into the top 4 all of a sudden. You've been sort of loitering around sort of P7, P8 for the last few weeks, and with some worse results for Bailey, Hammond and Vivas, that might boost you up nicely, at least into the top 5, I would hazard a guess. So again, that must be a great feeling. You're sort of hitting that peak form where it matters right at the end of the season, and that's exactly where you want to carry it to bring home the points in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after Sebring last week, where I had the tech issue along with a couple of other drivers with that forced update and the freeze, I thought I was on for a P2 finish there to really sort of, start consolidating that late season, charge forward. But getting this is, to get me in the top 5, I'll be happy with that for the 10th season.
Good stuff, mate. Well, I'll as we always do, we like to give the drivers a chance to give a shout out to anyone before we let you go. So again, big congratulations, and anyone that you'd like to shout out, you can go ahead and do that now.
Thank you, very kind. Basically, some massive shout out to the entire DXT team. Great bunch of guys and girls who are very supportive. In races, lots of good teamwork and communications. And again, a big shout out to Barry, but also to the elite winner, Mr. Dawson. He sort of in an effort to get better at sim racing, taken up some coaching with him, and he's been fantastic. And he's really helped me unlock some little gremlins that I didn't know I had. So a shout out to all those guys. Very good
to hear that sim coach is having an effect up and down the grid. That's very nice to hear. And good stuff, mate. Well, I'm glad that someone is looking forward to Suzuka, because it's feel like it's been quite negative overall. So it's one of my favourite tracks. I'm glad it's one of yours. Fingers crossed for you that you can bring home a good result and hopefully tie up your championship with another good result. Best of luck with all your preparation, mate.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Sam. See you soon.
Samuel Clark, he's gone already. I don't even have to drag myself out again for that. He had a great race to win, but he was supported by his teammate, wasn't he? All the way through it, and we spoke about Brainwomen in the broadcast, but let's get the man himself in the booth. Barry, welcome in. Can you hear us, first of all?
Yeah. I can hear you.
Welcome in, mate. Well, we've just spoken to Sam, as I'm sure you're aware, and he's very happy with himself, of course, and with you and with the team and everything. So I'm probably going to ask very similar questions just to get your perspective, of course. Your best result by a long shot so far this season, of course. P5 a few weeks ago, up into P2, and to make it even better, you've compounded it with some good points in the teams with your teammate winning the race. So just tell us how you're feeling at the moment.
Yeah, I'm really happy. I mean, I was celebrating like I won after lap 1 just because I'd managed to get through it for a change. The last few weeks have been a bit difficult. Sebring had very good pace, up 5 positions, and just caught out in an unlucky lap 1 there. And I think the race before as well, I was showing good pace, and again just caught up in lap 1. So it's come here. Obviously got my Moses set up all dialed in now as well. I felt like I had good pace. I was a bit disappointed with my qualifying. I think I was 5th in class, a few cars between me and Sam, but I got a really good start, positioned the car well, made some clean moves, and before I do it, I was right there with Sam. I think I made my most important move was probably turn 4, lap 1. Went around the outside of Scott Kostrick and Grant Miller, and that was key, I think, for my result.
It almost feels like a bit of a race of two halves for you, doesn't it? Because it was that frantic racing towards the start, and then it died down. And it was a bit of a management phase towards the end. Talk us through what it was like to manage that towards the end, because you two lead in the race, but you've got a chasing pack. The likes of Scott Kostrick behind. What were the if you're willing to share, of course, what were the little techniques that you were able to use to be able to make sure you both got to the end there?
Yeah, so basically the plan was, we agreed, running for, obviously after the first few laps and it settled down, I was behind Sam. It was, okay, let's keep it as it is, let's build a gap. I think we managed to build about a 5-second gap before the pit stops, 4 seconds. And then I pit the lap before Sam, and he managed to come out 3.8 seconds ahead of me. So, we figured out why, because he didn't put any fuel in the car. But once I caught back up to him, he explained that he had no fuel, and we kind of, I wanted to go for it, but, we're teammates, and it would have been like taking down a wounded dog. So we have really good pace, we're managing it well, and the 1-2, fantastic.
Yeah, I was thinking about that a little bit after what happened to Sam around Canada. I kind of said to Dara, I think Barry will be happy enough with P2, and Sam does deserve that victory. So in the end, I'm glad that it came out the way it did, and obviously you stayed away from one another. We've seen teammates go off around this circuit together. We were hoping that wasn't going to be the same case for you two. In the end, it wasn't, which is brilliant news. And before we let you go, Barry, I wanted to touch on the equipment that you mentioned. You've got your new Moses setup, which I think you was it around Magello, maybe round 4 or so that you swapped over. And how's that been for you over the last sort of month or so? Because I think it was quite a big improvement, if I'm not mistaken. And have you been noticing changes in your techniques and just an overall feeling in the sim now as you got a little bit better?
Yeah, definitely. I went for the Moser R9, so obviously it's got a good ceiling, 9 Newton meters. So I don't have it turned mega high, but that allows me to, feel all the little tiny pieces of feedback. And yeah, I think it has made a difference, to be honest. I feel like I'm able to catch slides easier. I feel like I'm able to position the car a bit better. I think I've changed my FOV slightly as well. I think that's also helped. And probably say most importantly, the load cell brake. Now I've got that tuned in. That is, just need to work on braking a bit less. I'm still over braking a bit.
Absolutely right. Yeah, less is more when it comes to braking. Are we right? So, yeah, that'll do you though. And this kind of result fills you with that kind of confidence. And one last question before we let you go, Suzuka. Next week, a track for you or not so much?
Yeah, let's have a go. I only bought it last week, so still yet to turn a lap over in anger. But yeah, I've done it on the F1 games back in the day, and fantastic track. So
absolutely,
hopefully we'll be in for some good racing.
Yeah, good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Well, great to see DXT back up on the top step. I've shared some teams in the past with DXT, so it's good to see you guys having a bit of success with some new faces as well. Of course, not always the traditional guys, so it's good stuff. And yeah, before we let you go, mate, we always like to give an opportunity for a shout out. So if you'd like to do that with anyone, you can go ahead and do that now.
Yeah, just echoing what Sam said. Really, the DXT boys. I mean, something happens to one of us, they're always there to help out, and if they get knocked out the race, they don't just rage quit. They'll sit there and help crew chief us and keep us going. So yeah, cheers lads, appreciate it.
Happy days, mate. Good stuff. Congratulations again, and yeah, we'll see you next week.
Cheers.
All right, Barry. See you, mate. Happy days.
I remember there. Good to get a word from him as well, particularly, a couple of drivers we haven't really spoken to this season. Getting good results tonight, always good to get a word from them, isn't it?
It is, it really is, yeah. And like I said, it's good to see DXT back on top in a big way, which is good for them. And yeah, absolutely, to speak to some different names is always what we like to do then. So it's looking pretty good at the front of the order in both of our classes. Championships will be wrapped up this time next week, of course. So before we close out, let's go ahead and see what else we've got on the cards here at SRI then. So as said, last week is the final week of the season, round 10 of season 10 around Suzuka for that 1 hour race. You can catch myself and Dara here from 8 o'clock on split A, and Paul Walsh from a similar time at split B as well. The Sunday GT3 UKSR season is well underway. You can catch that broadcast as live by Mr. Paul Walsh every other Wednesday. I think it's Wednesday night. And then the final 3 rounds of the America's GT Challenge arrives on Sunday once again for round 8 around Long Beach. Personally, not looking forward to that one in the slightest, but we got to do it, so we'll give it our best bet. Only a couple rounds to go from then. I think it's Road America after that, and I'll be hard pressed to remember the final round of the season, but you can catch Paul Walsh on that one around 7:30 every other Sunday, and then the Practice League every Tuesday evening and Saturday morning. Get yourself involved at discord.gg/SimRacing International, and hopefully we'll see you out there on the circuit. We have, I believe, a sellout already for our GT3 Thursday season 11, and I believe there might be some spaces available for the Sunday GT3 UKSR season 17, and we also have a brand new GTE Championship on a Friday evening. Plenty of spaces available in that one. All information can be found on the Discord server. Hopefully we see some more of you getting involved. So that's it from us, and it's sad to say actually it'll be my last broadcast in quite some time as I take a break away from life generally as I go on my little travels for a few months. So it'll be sad this time next week to see it all closing down for a good few months, but it's been a cracking season, and I'm looking forward to what should be a brilliant season finale to crown 2 more champions at the end of our race this time next week. So thanks to all of you for joining and for sticking around until the end. Can't wait to get going again for the final round of the season. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll catch you all very shortly.